There's no time.
The time is
13
o'clock.
Hey, everybody out there. It's episode 185.
I can't believe that shit. 185. We're almost like 200.
What, you think I'm lying? I'm not lying.
Damn. We're almost at like 200 weeks.
We're going to have to do... We've been talking about this, but maybe at the 200th episode, we might have to do a live stream.
Yeah.
But that needs to do some planning, like I said, because I want to have it like at the best time for everybody, like to watch it. You know what I mean?
We got to get onto that live stream game.
Yeah.
Some of the other channels that I'm friends with, like Weapons and stuff, British channel, that guy will sit there and talk about Corona, and they just keep sending him money. It's like, cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching.
And I actually really like every
it.
now and then, like I said, we like Dan Bell's channel. He does Dead Malls, and he does Another
Bell.
Dirty Room.
Yeah.
And sometimes on Saturday nights, he will do a live stream like from a gross ass hotel room. He edits them and puts them up later on, but it's like the live stream ones are funny because you get to just see him sitting around smoking cigarettes and
smoking joints
and stuff like that, like talking about how
shit.
disgusting the fucking room is.
Yeah.
And it's like it's super fun.
Yeah.
So we should probably do that. I mean, the thing is, I don't think that it probably wouldn't be that much different because I record the shows live. Like I don't take much out.
A live stream, though, cannot replace a standard show.
Yeah.
It has to be an addition to.
That's what I mean. It would be like a special
Yeah.
thing, like right around the 200th episode.
Yeah, and if it's popular, we can continue
or
to
maybe
do
when
it.
we get to 10,000 subscribers, or one of
Yeah.
those, like when we do a milestone.
Usually what the deal is, from what I've been seeing, you got to have a lot of subscribers for a live stream to be successful.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
But if you start live streaming, do you get more subscribers?
Live screaming.
Live streaming. If you start
can
live
do that.
streaming, does it actually get you more subscribers? I don't know.
It's a
It
catch-22.
might be, yeah. It's like a catch-22.
Except like in a good way.
Right.
But yeah, so, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. It's like I said, I definitely want to do, like, plan, like, what time we're going to do it and stuff like that. But either around the 200th episode or when we get 10,000 subscribers, I will think about probably doing one.
Problem with a live stream is that we have to have everything queued up till we have things to talk about.
Yeah.
If you don't have anything to talk about, then the live stream's fucking dead.
Although you never seem to have that problem.
If we're gonna do a live stream, if you're gonna do a live stream, we ought to do it on some kind of current event that everybody else is talking about, so we can throw our two.
Yeah, I mean, if there was
Gotta
like
be
some
something
kind
that's
of
current and relevant to that time frame.
yeah, like if there
Wait.
was some kind of big crime, like for example, let's say something was going on with like the Golden State Killer or something
Right.
like that. And like I said, if we went off on tangents, I mean, we do that on the show anyway. Just as long as we had some kind of thing like to
Yeah.
talk about and to like kickstart a conversation.
Right now, what would be relevant would be Corona.
Right.
Yeah, we could talk about Corona or something else that's happening in the news. I don't know if you guys agree with me. Go ahead and say so in the comment section. But
Yeah,
that's how
I mean, we will
imagine it.
probably definitely do one this year. It's just I have to decide like the logistics of it and when we're gonna do it and what time we're gonna do it and when everyone
Sometimes
can watch
thinking
it.
about it. Sometimes thinking about it too much is more complicated than just fucking do it.
Well, but you know how much I have to think
Yeah.
about everything.
Okay.
Well, I have to overthink everything
Yeah.
because I have to. I'm kind of the one that has to like determine, when it's going to go up and what, because I have to do all the technical shit.
Because Liam from Weapons and stuff will just turn his damn camera on and just start talking. Okay, what questions do you have for the Corona? Yeah, he does a daily Corona update
Yeah.
and answers all kinds of questions about masks. What's a good protective mask? And
Wear a mask and wash your
he's
hands.
down. He's down.
Get all your shots.
He's the Gary Newman of fucking of fucking face masks. All right.
The Gary Newman.
He's got that Asperger's, where he knows everything about NBC gear. That's his thing.
But that's good. That's good. To
Yeah,
know,
and
like
then,
be
you
an
know what I
expert
mean?
at
And
something.
it just, Corona came out of the blue, and he's now the NBC specialist of the internet. And they're hitting him and asking him every question.
That's awesome, though.
That's every man
I mean,
has
it's not
his
awesome
place
that-
in time.
It's not awesome
where
that
his
there's, like,
greatness
a flu
rises.
pandemic, but
Where his greatness rises. There's a place in time for every skill set.
I believe that's true.
Hell yes. Hell yes. Any man who's ever done any time in the Army understands that there's a place and time for every skill set.
It's like as lame as some of the talents that I have are. I feel like
No, you got.
I'm glad that I live in this time period when, like, as bullshit as some of my talents
Don't
are.
believe
It's
it.
like,
Don't believe her. Don't believe her. Her skill set is that she's a great writer and she's a fucking grammar Nazi and a spelling Nazi. She knows how to spell everything, and she knows every fucking like sentence structure and how to form paragraphs right. And she's
well, I love that kind of shit.
she's into that.
I know
yeah.
it's dorky, but it's like...
Yeah.
Also, another thing that actually has really served me well is that I'm real good at figuring out technical shit. Even if I don't care about it, and it like I resent having to do it.
She worries too much about it.
But you know what I mean? Like if somebody said, "Hey, design me a website," I'm like, "Oh, I don't want to do that." But like when I go and like actually look at it, I'm like, "Oh, okay," and I did it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even though I resent having to learn how to do it.
Okay, are there any shout-outs?
There are a lot. Because
Okay.
the last show that we did,
All right.
we actually recorded it earlier, like much earlier than we normally would,
Yes.
because we had some like issues like with whatnot. So there were a lot of like patrons and stuff that I didn't get to call out on the last show, like on the John Wayne Gacy one, just because we recorded it like way before anybody came on. So we have a lot of like people to shout out. So we have several new patrons, and please forgive me if I'm butchering your names. But we have one named Ciarra, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Ciarra, yeah. Yeah, I've talked to her.
Yeah,
she's
okay.
cool. Her and her boyfriend.
Yeah.
How you doing, Ciarra? California.
One named Melissa,
Yeah.
and one named please tell me, because I know you've been talking to this person like online
With the X's and
with the X. How do you pronounce that?
I
Do you
don't know.
You speak Portuguese. How do you not know?
well.
I mean, it's Spanish. It's close.
Yeah,
but
it's not the same because
Okay.
in Spanish that would be something like a Z.
That's what what
Okay.
I would have assumed.
In Portuguese, that's not a Z. That's a SH or it's an SH consonant. A sh.
See, I would have thought that it was like Z, so
Yeah.
I would have said Xanada
Xanada.
or Zanada.
Zanada.
That
Zanada.
sounds like what I was
Is there
thinking.
an accent or crasi?
There's above the first A.
Zanada.
See, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Probably Zanada.
I haven't taken Spanish since the 4th grade. I took French.
Yeah, I
later.
took Spanish one time. and Portuguese. I grew up with Portuguese, and as a teenager living in Brazil, it's instinctive to me now. Really, back when I was around all those damn Brazilian girls as a teenager, I used to dream in Portuguese.
Yeah.
Yeah, dream.
Well, it's funny because even though you don't use it on a daily basis, like I hear you sometimes like talking to people online, because you for a time you were like talking to a bunch of people in Brazil like about motorcycles and stuff, and I would hear you talking and you would just like go right into Portuguese like it was nothing.
Yeah, you can't think about it. If you think about it, then you'll fuck.
Well, because you had a tutor when you were living there.
Well, all my friends were,
and that too, you were kind of
my friends were kind of bilingual when
Yeah.
I started, but they got sick of translating everything for me. So they was like, fuck you,
we're not talking to you anymore.
Yeah, fuck you. So everything was just damn Portuguese. What did he say? No.
So you had to figure
And
it
actually,
out.
I understood. I'm fucking up. I understood what they were saying,
Yeah.
but I couldn't speak it.
Understanding it and speaking it are
Right.
two different things.
Right. So I'd have them translate for me. They got sick of that shit after about 3 or 4 months.
Because I mean, I had the same thing. I took
Yeah.
French for several years, and
Yeah.
I understood about 70% of what people were saying to me in
Yeah.
French, but I could probably only speak like 20 or 30.
What happened one night is that we got blitzed. I was about 16 or 17.
Like
we
you
got
do.
fucking hammered on cachaça. Cachaça and other things like fogo paulista. Which is kind of like the Brazilian version of Southern Comfort. Or Drambuie or something. Anyway, I got loaded and all of a sudden just started speaking Portuguese. I got fucking pissed because I wanted to say something to somebody and they
you
wouldn't
couldn't.
translate. So I just got pissed and just started.
and then just started, and they were
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
"See, you can speak it all
Yeah,
along."
they started laughing.
You big fucking liar.
They were like, you motherfucking gringo. You
'Cause
you
it
can
got rid
speak
of
all-"
your inhibitions.
Yeah, right. The inhibitions went away.
That's why.
Yeah, the inhibitions went away. I didn't care if I made any mistakes, so it
Yeah.
just started fucking flying out.
So it just
And then when I sobered up, I just continued to speak Portuguese.
Yeah, it was like a breakthrough.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like, that, because that's something that inhibited me,
Yeah.
like learning to speak French, because especially when I was learning French, and then we had like all these French speakers coming there, and I was like terrified to speak things. I'm like, oh my God, they're
Yeah.
so going to laugh at me.
And I just want Portuguese is not like Spanish. It's related. Okay, I can understand pretty much everything in Castilian Spanish or Castellano. But actually, Portuguese is closer to Romanian. People forget about Romanian. I was one time listening to this fucking documentary, and they had a bunch of live stuff about the overthrow of Ceausescu. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, I'm going, wait a minute, hold on, I understood that. And they're like, whoa, I understood that. And I realized that Romanian is like Portuguese. I didn't know.
Great. I'm so fascinated.
I
by
never would have thought that.
linguistics.
Because I thought that was like some kind of a Russian language. No, it's a Romance language. It's part of the Roman Empire, like the other Latin languages. But it's actually closer to Romanian.
You know what?
Romanian
For a while, I tried learning Welsh. I still have like a bunch of Welsh dictionaries and language tapes and stuff like that, and I got okay at it. But it's like that language is structurally, it's kind of similar to English in the word order and stuff like that. So I found out easier than French, because French, everything is kind of like reversed and stuff like that. But I don't know. Welsh is like, it's really hard to, because their letters have like drastically different sounds than they do in English. Yeah. And I found it really, really hard to get past that. Like every time you see like a Y or a U or something like that, it's drastically different pronunciation.
I was reading up, on like, this is years back. One time I was reading up on like English literature history, and they were just talking about how many different versions of English there used to be.
Oh, yeah.
There used to be like Kentish and Northumbrian and weird shit like that. They're all extinct now. We've all inherited what they called the King's English. Yeah. And that was, from Shakespeare, handed, or I guess you could say the language that we speak, the English that we have now is kind of like, its genesis goes back to Shakespeare, really. Yeah. That was the English that the king spoke. The other Englishes are extinct, I guess.
Well, I don't think they are entirely, because there's still like some variations. Like when I was in the UK, even some people in Wales that were, bilingual, they could speak English and Welsh, even they told me that they couldn't understand a goddamn word the Scots were saying.
But Welsh,
even though it's English.
Well, Welsh is not English, though.
No, I know.
Right,
I know.
But there were other Englishes.
Yeah.
Like I think Northumbrian and Kentish were.
Isn't Cornish still around?
They were other forms of
I
English.
thought some people still spoke
My
Cornish.
understanding. I mean,
I don't know if it's like their first language, but.
Right.
It's just,
And then there's Mississippi, which is in English all unto itself. And I only speak it when I'm mad.
Or when you're talking to your dad on the phone.
But, okay.
But you have to be on the phone for a while, like, for it to, like, start coming out.
Yeah, what's funny is that, I was telling showing one of my online friends how people in Mississippi sound and where it came from. I was doing all the history where the dialect came from that I spoke. It's black. A lot of it is. What happened is it started out, the older forms of English were basically kind of like an archaic form of British. It was a lot of the stuff that we say at one time was aristocratic, like ain't was like an aristocratic thing,
Isn't that funny?
And y'all and yonder and shit is actually some aristocratic British shit that's obsolete now, but we still use it.
Everybody makes fun of people.
But what happened is that, because after Reconstruction, there were no jobs. Only men worked. Women didn't work, really. There were no jobs. And it was mostly white men that were working, like, you know what I mean? Like, actual, real jobs. Everybody else was just trying to survive. So, most white babies were kind of raised by black babysitters and nannies. Yeah. And that's where we learned to talk. So, kind of like an Africanized version of English was... appeared. And I was listening to the recordings of Black Girl from Mississippi, and I'm listening to her talk, and I go, I remember that so much. I'm listening to it, and I go, that's how I talk. Yeah. And I showed it to somebody else and go, and that's where it comes from. Well, I think that
happened a lot, like in the South. Yeah. It's definitely a hybrid, just like the cuisine is.
Exactly. All that fried chicken and fried stuff,
that's
African.
Cuisine. Yeah.
We're...
There's a huge African influence in the South, and not only in, like I said, in the food, in the language, everything.
White Southerners from like Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, Florida, Panhandle, up and around here, we're kind of like, we're the American version of the Boer. Yeah. Like South African Boers. We're kind of like that. Kind of Africanized white people.
Yeah, because that's kind of... Because there was like so much like crossover.
Yeah, there's all the crossover and stuff.
But yeah, so what else did I have? Oh, and also I want to say that one of our previous patrons, Heather, drastically increased her support over the past week. So we really appreciate all of you guys. You know how much we love you.
Yeah. Yep.
Also, I got a check in the mail, a donation for the show from someone named Marcus. They have sent me one before.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. We will
that.
take any and all monies that
it's
you
a
would...
trip. We'll be sitting and all of a sudden we'll get like a check for $50 and a check for like
crazy.
$20 and we're like,
I love that though. It's like that. Yeah. And I'm
like
just
a nice
like,
tip, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, I really appreciate that. Like I said, we didn't really, I mean, we started this show like not necessarily to make money off it. We just like, we're like, hey, we're kind of funny.
We wanted a project
we like
to
to
do.
talk and
Yeah. Wanted a project to do. We kind of became people's online
and
friends.
I said I write books. It's like maybe people will
Yeah.
like want to read my books if they
Yeah.
get to know me and stuff like that. So the fact that some people are now like they're sending us all this
Yeah.
stuff, it's like that's
And
really
like I'm
awesome.
saying, like that guy Zanada, who he's wearing Sisters of Mercy shirts and shit. He bought a brand new and he's wearing that around.
He's got him
showed
all
him
into
that-
goth.
I showed him the First and Last and Always album, and he and his family were like fucking blown away. So he started wearing
That's a
that
great
shirt.
fucking album
And he
still.
says, "Man, all these old people are going, man, that's an awesome shirt because they remember that shit." Yeah, that is an awesome.
Well, it's
album.
always like when I go
Yeah.
out, like when I go to Independent Bar and I see like some 20-year-old
Yeah.
and they're super into like Sisters of Mercy
Yeah.
or Bauhaus or something like that, and they know all the songs and everything. I'm
Yeah.
like, the kids
Yeah.
are all right. That's
Yeah,
what
and
I'm
then I
saying.
showed him then I showed him Daughters of Bristol.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
He was like a Sisters of Mercy. I don't want to say ripoff. That sounds mean.
kind of like a tribute or
But they're like a tribute
it's a
band.
sequel band
There you go.
because they don't do any covers.
Yeah, they do their own original
Yeah.
material, but it sounds very much like the
Yeah.
Sisters of Mercy.
He asked to come on the show, but he didn't say if he had any kind of specialty yet, and then he invited you on his show. But we'll see. It's something we have to work out.
Well, it's like, who's got specialty?
We've really only had 3 official guests on,
Yeah.
and they were all famous. They were writers, or like Dr. Price, or we had Angry Gay Pope.
We had him on 3 times, I think.
Yeah, we had him on 2 or 3 times. And I thought
He's rad.
Didn't we have? We
had the guy that
didn't we have Steve Merrill?
we
on?
did, but we also had we had the guy that was doing the
did-
summer wind.
that's right, did
house,
Summer
the
Wind,
summer
that's
wind
right.
restoration.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was a while back.
Right. So actually, normally we've had friends over during our specials, but normally to have a guest, we kind of when we first started the show, Jenny and I made agreement between each other that we would only have guests that were famous,
Yeah.
basically. But that were, that were relevant to some kind of topic that we were
That we
doing,
were talking about.
that we
yeah.
were talking about. That's what I meant by famous. But,
Yeah.
So, if you do ever want to come on the show, and this is an offer to anybody, and anybody can contact us. If you can come on the show, if you have a good topic to talk about,
Yeah.
we'll consider it.
And like I said, you don't
got to
gotta
be a specialist in something.
Yeah, that would be helpful. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not a specialist in anything in particular.
We're generalists.
I'm just kind of a general.
We're
like a
generalists.
jack
That's
of
what
all
the show's
trades
about.
Type of person.
Right.
Because I'm interested in lots of different things. So,
Right. It has to be something topical, and you have to know that topic, and it has to be something that the audience would be interested in listening to.
Yeah.
And then you can come on.
Like I said, crime be good. Anything like that.
True crime, paranormal, anything.
Yeah.
Anything that's along that kind of darker realm, we can do it.
Yeah.
But we just have to get together and put the show together.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Also, one more thank you to Dominic for sending us a steelbook edition
That's right.
of John Carpenter's Assault on Precinct 13.
You're right.
We will probably be reviewing that on Friday.
Dominic's the only motherfucker that has given me what I asked for, which was the damn Blu-ray edition. Everybody else is sending me DVDs, but I understand it because sometimes the movies that we're talking about are kind of old.
Yeah.
So they're mostly DVD, and to try to get them on Blu-ray, a lot of them.
Well, some of them are a pain in the ass, or
They're
they're
pain in the
really
ass, they're
expensive,
super expensive.
or it has
Right.
to do with like the fucking
even full-blown Blu-ray.
yeah.
Which thank you very much, Dominic.
That
will
was
go
much
into the
appreciated.
collection.
Again, steelbook.
Yes.
And speaking of Blu-rays, just today, the day that we were recording this, not the day that it's going out, but we just received the Blu-ray of the new Nicolas Cage H.P. Lovecraft
Yes. Got to see this.
adaptation, The Color Out of Space.
Color Out of Space.
So we'll be reviewing that on the
talking about
matinee show because that's new movies.
I hope
it's good. I'm very excited about
I hope
it.
Cage is just chewing the shit out of that fucking scenery.
I want to see some Mandy type shit happen.
As
in this
crazy
movie.
as that motherfucker can act, man, he better put that shit to good
I love
use.
him though. He commits.
She got me a Mandy poster. I got that shit
It's
hanging
silk.
up in the bedroom. It's a silk poster, man.
It's
Fucking
beautiful.
Awesome. I love Mandy. Do I have that on Blu-ray? I think I do, don't I?
I don't remember if you do. You have so many. I don't remember which ones you have.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you talk about getting ones and then like I don't
we
know
never
if you
actually
ever.
get 'em.
I don't know if
I
you
gotta
ever actually bought
We're
it
gonna
or not.
reorganize some shit back here. Where we're gonna start making because I'm getting so many Blu-rays. We gotta have like a big place to put them.
I probably need to buy another. I need to go to
So we need to
IKEA
start-
and buy another
Yeah,
bookshelf.
I got
'Cause
robots
that's where I
back
got these
here.
ones
I got
from.
fucking. We need to rearrange some shit.
Because man, I got
So
so,
we can
many
put
new books and
the eternal movie selection back here.
yeah, we probably should. Because like I said,
Yeah.
I forget like what ones you have.
Yeah.
I have a shit ton of DVDs and stuff like that too. It's like some of them are up in the attic. I think.
I have enough for a fucking rental store. Those don't exist anymore.
Yeah,
But you know what
but
I mean?
if they did,
if they did, I could
we
run
could open one.
Yeah.
Yep, all kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so after all of those shout outs, did I even say what this goddamn show was going to be about? I mean, it says in the title.
It says in the title.
This show's about the Marquis de Sade, y'all.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's kind of relevant because I was talking about taking French in school, even though I should note right from the outset that I am sure I'm going to mangle all of these French names that I'm going to have to say. So I apologize in advance.
This is a topic relevant to me and Jenny because we know all these fucking kinky ass BDSM motherfuckers. We've been to all these clubs. We know the fucking the people in our local scene right here, and this is where it all came from. The Marquis de Sade.
Yeah, not like it
Marquis.
wasn't happening before that.
Yeah,
But the fact that, I mean, the term sadism was
came from
coined,
this guy.
you know, after his name.
Right.
I think it's just because, one, he wouldn't shut up about it. And he
Yeah.
wrote so many books about it that were so scandalous. Even today,
Yeah.
if you read the shit,
You're like, that motherfucker said
God
that in the
damn it.
1700s? Yeah, he's kinky. He's kinky. And he's not kinky.
and nasty.
Yeah,
it's
he's
nasty.
kinky, nasty. The motherfucker was criminal, really. He was.
Yes.
Today, he'd have been locked the fuck up.
Well, he was back then,
He
too.
was locked up back then. But today, he would have gotten even harsher sentences. They never would have let this dude free.
No.
He was a sexual offender.
And rightly so.
And a predator, all right? And just a fucking... He was very intelligent, but I'm just going to say the dude was a piece of shit. He was a piece of shit.
I would agree with that.
He was a rapist.
Yeah.
But we're going to get into this shit
And
later.
that's the thing. It's like the reason that I find the Marquis de Sade so fascinating, and I think the reason that a lot of people find him fascinating, is that he's a very complex character because I think that people still seem to think of like people as like, you know, all good or all bad, like very black and white.
Yeah, no, he was a mix.
This guy could be either
Yeah.
thing. It's like, you know, intellectuals are like, you know, he, you know, advocated for personal freedom and individuality and like, you know, he was against the strictures of the church and against, and that's good.
In a certain way. But he also rationalized rape.
Exactly. That's what I was just going to say. So it's like, yeah, some of the shit that he said is good and I would agree with it. But the fact that he lived his life in the sense that it's like, oh, individual freedom, but it seemed like individual freedom for me and fuck you all, fuck everybody else. I can just do whatever I want to anybody. It seemed like he was rationalizing. It was almost like he wasn't a serial killer, but he had that kind of mentality.
He would have been one.
I think he would have been.
He would have been.
Maybe in this day and age.
Yeah, he would have been one.
And maybe if he hadn't been in prison so much when he was
the only reason,
alive.
The only reason why he wasn't killing the people back then is because he knew that he didn't really have to. Because if he got caught, he wouldn't do a whole lot of time.
Yeah, because he was a nobleman.
He was a nobleman. And
I
there
mean,
was a bunch of class. There was a bunch
and
of
to
class.
be honest with
and
you,
what he was doing was so far beyond the pale. So the society of that time couldn't classify what he was doing. They didn't know how to deal with it.
that's what I mean. And the fact that you have to think that the fact that noblemen, in particular, were getting away with a lot of shit that he was doing. So the fact that he was made an example of, that he was put in prison, so he must have been either doing something way that much worse, or he was doing what everyone else was doing, but he wasn't ashamed of it, and so he was just kind of like really open about it. So that caused, you know, him to get into trouble.
Yeah, well, he was kind of ahead of his time. He didn't realize what he was doing was as nasty as it really... Well, maybe he did.
I think he did. Well, no, he definitely did. He was self-aware. Yeah.
He just knew that he wouldn't really have to pay a modern price for it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And another thing is that he was intellectualizing everything. So he was he's rationalizing.
He's making a philosophy
into this, and it was new at the time.
It was.
Society wasn't familiar with what he was talking about, so he really wasn't being. He was being condemned for it, but he wasn't being condemned for it for the way a modern person would be condemned.
Right.
Doing the shit he was doing, you'd be locked up for life.
And rightly so.
You'd be locked up for life
so.
for what he was doing. But,
because, like I said, as you said, as ahead of time he was, it's like he didn't see any difference between, say, heterosexuality and homosexuality, which, that's very modern. Also, but the fact of the matter is that as maybe ahead of the game as he was, and some people have even attempted to say that some of his novels, particularly Juliet, were early feminist texts just because the female protagonist had agency and was able to be freely just as horrible as a man, and she was causing suffering to others. But the fact of the matter is, it's yes, personal freedom is good. Yes, individuality is good. Yes, we know that stuff nowadays. But I feel like he took it into the realm of nihilism, where he's basically... And it's weird because he tends to get lumped in with, the Age of Reason or the kind of the rationalists, or like Rousseau and stuff like that. But he was actually saying kind of the opposite. Because, Rousseau and people like that, who he was actually a big fan of, were saying stuff like, humans are innately good. Whereas de Sade was saying, no, humans are innately cruel. And that's good. So to go along with that cruelty, to, indulge that cruelty is the ultimate virtue.
Right.
That's basically what he was saying.
In my experience, in general, philosophers are crazy as fuck, all of them.
Well, you kind of have to be.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Mankind is not innately good, and mankind is not innately cruel.
Yeah, I don't think it's either
one. It's neither one. Mankind is innately kind of self-serving to a certain extent, but we're primates, like chimpanzees and gorillas, which that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing, because they do kind of look out for their own, too.
They cooperate.
The essence of a human being is reciprocation, if you ask me.
Yeah.
If you're good to a person, they tend to want to be good back to you. If you're bad to a person, they're bad back to you. That's really how it works. It's just that simple.
So, yeah, that's what I mean.
It's reciprocation.
I think that both of the extremes are wrong, because it's clearly not.
Right.
Humans are a combination of both things.
For me, the center is reciprocation.
Yeah.
You break a fucking deal, or you don't reciprocate, you're going to pay.
Yeah.
It's in your interest to reciprocate.
Yeah.
Somebody's nice to me, I'm going to be nice to you. You know what I mean? You're bad to me, I'm going to be bad to you.
Yeah.
And that's just, that's more normal. And most animals do that.
Yeah.
Which to me...
So to me, that seems like the most natural state.
That's the natural state.
So I think people that say humans are innately good or humans are innately evil, I think they're both wrong. Both wrong.
Right.
So in that sense, yes, you can criticize, some of the Age of Enlightenment thinkers for saying that humans are innately good, but you can also criticize de Sade for saying that humans innately suck, and so we should just go along with that.
I don't buy it.
And, well, another thing, too, is that's kind of like the naturalistic fallacy,
right.
In the sense that just because something happens in nature, that's what's supposed to happen, or that's what we should do, which, like I said, so I think he kind of...
Well, I understand what you're saying, but we also had to say, well, what is nature?
Yeah, and I said, everything is more nuanced than...
It's kind of like the noble savage concept. That's not true either.
Yeah.
Okay? For instance, you can go to the Great Plains Indians. All right? They weren't noble savages. They were just people. Mm-hmm. All right? They did the same crazy kind of shit the white man did. They just did their own version of it.
Yeah.
They had their own weird religions and their own weird belief systems. They were more akin to, pirates than they were anything else. Running around on the plains and raiding each other and taking things and abducting women and killing women and children, you know what I mean? It's like something that a pirate would do. There wasn't any real nobility in it. It had to do with, in their circumstances, the rules of the Great Plains.
Yeah.
In the same ways there were rules on the ocean.
Yeah.
And they were tribal, you know what I mean?
And people also react to their immediate environments.
Yeah.
Like you said, to maximize their self-interest, and also reciprocation comes into play also.
So don't idealize human beings. They're just not like that.
I mean, honestly, and don't shit on them either.
No.
I mean, we're just people.
Right.
And everyone is pretty much the same.
And there's also a certain kind of operating system that all people kind of go through. Now, it's moderated by cultures and traditions. But if you understand those cultures and traditions, you can predict pretty much how a person will react to you.
And I feel like, yes, culture makes a big difference, but I don't think it makes as much difference as people like to. No.
Even the racial differences between...
Most people will react the same way given the same stimuli.
Exactly. Even the racial differences that are present in people, it really isn't enough to violate that reciprocation that I was telling you about. If you're nice to people, no matter who they are, as long as they can recognize that you're being nice, they will return it.
Yeah, pretty much world over. Unless they're sociopaths. But that's pretty rare.
Unless they're... You just have to
Which
understand.
I think Marquis de Sade was.
Yeah, he was a fucking He's a psychopath or a sociopath.
Big time.
So, yeah, because, having grown up in different cultures, I've been all over the world, people reciprocate. You want to avoid culture clash. Like when I was in Egypt. There were certain religious things that you didn't want to fucking say because you're in a Muslim country, and they saw in the time that I was there, they saw things in religious terms, and their concept of religion was God of Abraham. So when you were dealing with a Muslim or a Bedouin out in the middle of the fucking Sinai Desert, you wanted to go back to Old Testament and talk about Abraham. They liked that kind of stuff. You wouldn't go with some French shit like Rousseau or anything. They didn't understand that. That's not their culture.
Well, you just have to approach them on their own terms.
Right.
With respect.
Right.
And I don't know why that would be controversial to say that, because that seems like all you need to do is just have a basic modicum of respect for other people.
You have to understand that other people are engaging with the world through their own lens.
Yeah.
And
just be aware of that lens and be cognizant of it. It's it's not that hard.
Right.
You know what I mean? So let's talk about the Marquis de Sade. Let's talk a little bit about his life. So now he was born an aristocrat, obviously. He was born in 1740 in Paris. Now his parents, his dad was a diplomat. And his mom was a lady in waiting for a princess. So he was born in this big palace, called Condé, which is the royal house of Condé. Now, apparently, from everything that I've read, his dad, he was Marquis de Sade. Let's just say this: he was a chip off the old block because his dad was very much kind of a hoe. You know what I mean? So he was running around having affairs and everything like that, which not that unusual for men at the time, I guess.
Yeah. Now, before we get too deep into this, for those of you who have seen movies about the Marquis de Sade, he's always cast as a sleek, sexy motherfucker with a fucking fantastic mustache or a beard or some shit like that. Okay. When the Marquis was young, he was kind of an average kind of looking guy.
He was, according to the drawings, he was okay looking.
Yeah, he was kind of small. But by the time he was a middle-aged man, you're talking about somebody who kind of looked like Ben Franklin.
Yeah, he was kind of a fatso.
He was a fat motherfucker, and he wasn't all that attractive. So
he was indulging. He was indulging in his, pleasures.
Let's not make some kind of an unrealistic internal view of who fucking the Marquis was, because he's been kind of eroticized over the years by certain people.
Weirdly, it does seem like that, doesn't it?
All right, get back to you talking about.
It seemed in 2000. I think it was in 2000. They made a movie about him. Well, at least about his final years, called Quills, and Jeffrey Rush was in it, who's a fairly attractive actor. And they had him. It was kind of his final years, in the insane asylum. And the weird thing about them, it's a good movie, but the weird thing about the movie was that not only did it really dramatize like how he died, but it also sort of made him into a martyr to free speech and intellectual freedom.
That's not what he
Which
was.
I'm not sure
No.
that's the angle that I
No.
would take.
Come on.
Just saying. And you know what I mean? It's like, and I'm not saying that his books should be banned because they were for a long time. You know, those are just words on a page. That's not going to hurt anybody. I don't think that they should be burned or banned or, you know, anything or censored or anything like that. But I'm talking about him as a person and the shit that he did.
Yeah.
You know, that needs to be separated from, because, you know, he was, as a person, he was not a good person.
No, and I read a collection of his works. This is years ago. It's just porn. Really.
And in a way, it gets kind of like gross and tedious after a while.
It's just porn. When he was in prison, he was writing porn and he was passing it out through the damn bars, I guess.
Well, he was basically sticking. Well, a lot
That's
of this,
how he made money.
His stuff wasn't published until later, like after he died. Like a lot of the stuff that he wrote in prison, I don't think he ever intended it to be published.
I remember that he was writing it. From what I read, he was writing it while he was in the Bastille and handing it out through the bars, and he had accomplices selling it. And then from the proceeds, he was able to buy stuff when he was in prison. That's how I remember it.
He did that a little bit, but see, the thing about it, I think a lot of people don't know this because he's mostly known for, like, the gross-ass porn, but he wrote a lot of other shit, too, like just regular, normal plays. He wrote a travelogue and stuff, so he sold some of that stuff. Well, that's all anybody reads. I don't even think any of his other stuff, like, has survived. But the interesting...
It's nasty,
it's
and
nasty.
you're like... Damn, they were thinking about that in the 1700s? That's
they were. It's like, if you
bizarre
read it
shit.
now, it's, you know what's really funny? I was reading a fucking article earlier today in The Independent, the British newspaper, and it was by the two guys that had done, like, a more recent, like, translation of 120 Days of Sodom, you know, because they were translating it out of French. They were translating it into English. And the hilarious thing, and I guess this never occurred to me, but they're like, so when you're translating something like this, that's basically just, like, all porn and just, like, all fucking and shit eating and everything like that.
Yeah.
He's like, so we're sitting there trying to decide. So he's like, so I'm sitting here having this conversation with the other guy that he's translating this, was like, well, okay, well, when he uses this French word, it's like, should we use dick or cock or prick? Or it's like, when they use this word, should we use tits or should we use, it's like they're having to like, they're like, we don't want it to sound too modern because it was written in the 1700s, but it's like, we don't want it to sound too nice either because it's supposed to be porn.
In the books, weird shit was happening. Like, you got some virginal fucking noble chick that you've abducted, and you fucking had sex with her against her will. That's fucking rape.
Well,
and then
obviously.
You call one of your manservants in who has this fucking gigantic cock, and he's got syphilis, and you make him have sex with her.
And give her syphilis.
And give her syphilis, and then you sew her shut.
Yeah.
So so the shit sticks, and she's gonna catch it. I mean, that's what we're talking about.
I mean,
here.
yeah, this is messed up
it's
shit.
Fucked up. Yeah.
It's like, it's not just fucking and orgies. It's like,
no, it's fucking torture and shit.
There's torture. There's shit. There's a lot of shit.
Making people swallow farts. All kinds.
Yeah,
of
it's eating vomit. It's like there's all kind of shit like that.
Yeah.
I mean, here's okay. Now, in 120 Days of Sodom, one of the characters is one of the prostitutes is like this old lady who it said has never wiped her ass ever.
Damn.
So she has like what they describe, and it's described because I read this portion of it. Out of her butt is like a volcano, like a little mountain of shit. And it says in there, like, the Marquis de Sade wrote something that is like, so even like shit from her infancy still clung there because she had never wiped her ass ever. So this is the shit. This is what this is the level of shit we're talking about. Yeah. And look, I'm saying.
He was a scatophile.
He was super into butt stuff. Well, sodomy was like his, that was his main thing. That was like the ideal.
It was everything, yeah.
Yeah, so everything was like about sodomy. And he didn't care. Men, women, children, he didn't give a shit.
Yeah,
he was just
and it was...
if there was an orifice, like a butthole, he would just stick something in there.
From what I remember, there was interracial stuff, there was bestiality, there was fucking everything.
He covered
all
the bases.
Were fucking covered.
All the bases.
Yeah.
Even nowadays, you read the shit and you're like, okay.
You're like, man, come on.
Okay.
Right, yeah. And it had to do with his upbringing and what he was trying to prove.
And here's the thing, like
trying to prove something.
Like I was saying to Tom, it's like, look, it's like I've read like portions of the book. I never sat down and read the whole thing. I mean, a lot of people don't know, but 120 Days of Sodom is the book. It's not a complete book. Like what happened was when he was writing it, and I'll get into this in a little bit. When he was writing it, he only wrote the introduction and like the first section that he finished. The rest of it was just like notes. Now they were really detailed notes, so they've been able to like kind of cobble together something from that, but it wasn't entirely finished. He was planning on finishing it later. But yeah, so I told him it was like, and I've never been able to sit through the entire like movie of Sallow, the 120 Days of Sodom by what's his name, like Paolo Pasolini or whatever his name is, from the 70s, because look, I love horror movies. I can watch gore. I can watch all kind of uncomfortable shit like all day long. But the second somebody starts eating poop or vomit, I'm out. I'm out. That's like pretty much the only thing I can't watch. I don't like pee either, but it's like, you know what I mean? I can stomach that. I can stomach watching people throw up and stuff like that, but it's, you know, like the end of Audition where like he's like eating vomit out of a bowl. So it's like, I'm like, oh, no, thank you.
What's funny is that,
no, thank you.
What's funny is that I have no reaction. I have no reaction to that.
For some reason, I don't know. It's like I said, I can watch, and I can even watch like real life, like surgery.
Yeah.
You know, I can watch like dead bodies being cut apart, autopsies and shit like that. I can watch all that and it doesn't bother me. But the second somebody like starts doing some shit with poop, yeah, I'm out of there.
It's funny. I don't really have any reaction to that. This didn't.
I don't know why. That's why I couldn't. That's why I couldn't sit through the Human Centipede like in one sitting. I was just. I had to keep getting up and leaving.
Human Centipede was tripping me
because I was like, I'm just gagging, and it's like I have to go over here and stop gagging for a minute before I come back. It just makes me like.
For some reason, I just didn't have any reaction to it.
I don't know. It's a poop and vomit just grosses me out. Huh. So although I was very amused by the old prostitute in 120 Days of Sodom with the volcano of shit stuck to her butt.
Yeah, that's kind of got.
She'd never wiped her ass. Now you're going to be thinking about that all weekend.
You never wipe your ass in volcano forms? I never thought of that.
Well, Marquis de Sade thought of it.
He thought of that shit, yeah.
He thought of all this. I don't know if that would really happen. I don't think
that would really happen.
But a lot of the shit that he wrote in there would
never wipe their asses, and they don't have fucking volcanoes sticking out of their asses.
I hope not. Yeah. So it's like... He just liked the sound of it. He's like, yeah volcano shit.
Making shit up.
I'm going to write that down.
Yeah.
I thought of the best idea ever. So yeah,
I'd slap the shit out of that dude.
Yeah, well. So it seemed like I said, his dad was kind of similar to him. He was kind of a libertine and shit like that.
That means slut.
Yeah, pretty much. To an extent where his mom, who was also kind of an absent parent, I mean, as a lot of aristocrats were back in the day, they'd kind of leave, they'd have the kid, and then they'd kind of take care of
Let me back up a little bit and kind of explain to the audience, in case you don't know, what an aristocrat was. All right? Nowadays in the United States...
A useless motherfucker that laid around and
okay,
did
now
nothing.
You fucked me up. What I was saying is that nowadays in the United States, you have people on welfare. They'll get a check from the government. And, you know, they might not do anything. They'll just buy some stuff to live in a house. In Europe, back in the 1700s, a nobleman was the fucking same thing. They didn't do anything. They just get a check from a king.
Except they actually had enough money to do something.
Yeah, but it was enough to do shit with.
Unlike people on welfare.
Which is some weird shit. It's like a high-end welfare.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, it's like a high-end welfare. Which is, to the American mind, boggling. It's a boggling fucking... You put these... You have rich people on welfare. And it's a high-end welfare.
And like I said, I would rather have poor people on welfare because at least, I mean, they don't give them enough to really live on, or at least live very well. But these people lived in huge palaces.
Yeah.
They're going around kidnapping women and raping them and shit like that, and then getting off because they had a whole bunch of money. Fuck that shit.
Ain't that some shit? Think about it.
Fuck that shit.
Think about that shit.
Look at what this motherfucker got away with.
You go up to the king and go, hey, I'm a count. Give me my check.
Yeah, essentially.
Make me a duke of something. Yeah. I want a bigger check.
Duke of something.
Yeah, a duke of this, a duke of that.
Duke of Earl.
They got the rich people on welfare.
Yeah. It's crazy.
That's awesome.
Well, they thought it was awesome.
They thought it was awesome, but
until the French Revolution.
I'm
cut their heads off.
My mind is boggled.
It is rather boggling, isn't it? Well, because I feel like, and Marquis de Sade for sure had this mindset also. They kind of felt like, well, that was their birthright.
Yeah.
They felt like they were like a cut above, almost like they were a different, I don't know if they'd say they were a different species than poor people, but I feel like that's probably where they were coming from.
So if you're poor and you're on welfare, you're living like a fucking nobleman.
Yeah, probably.
Basically.
Those people on welfare would be like, I wish. I wish I could afford something more than ramen noodles, but thank you.
No, I don't think so. Depending on what state you live in. Some of them have fucking nice cars and everything.
I've never seen that.
Yeah. Oh, actually, no. We have some friends that are kind of on welfare that live pretty good.
I don't know.
Sonia was doing pretty good for not working. Me and
was she though?
Not as good as us. But
I was gonna say that apartment was
not
not so great.
I guess so.
Yeah, and
but she didn't do anything.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
But like I said, that was like a shitty ass apartment.
Yeah,
and remember, we used to go pick her up sometimes. It was all kind of sketchy motherfuckers like
that's
hanging
right.
around.
Yeah, dealing crack.
Yeah. So it's like, oh, you're saying, she lived really great.
Well,
she lived in a fucking. It was
back in the old days.
It was her and her daughter living in a fucking crack den.
Back in the day, she would have been a countess.
I guess it's not the same. It's not the same. I mean, these people. Okay, so he's born in this fucking palace essentially because his mom is a lady in waiting and his dad is a diplomat. So his dad was essentially like such a shit that eventually his mom was just like, fuck all this, I'm going to a convent. Now, one thing that happened when the Marquis was young, he wasn't really raised by his mom, as a lot of aristocrats weren't. Like, they were raised by nannies and various other people's servants and whatnot. One thing that was remarked upon a lot when he was a kid, and maybe this was very common for aristocrats' children, because they're kind of like given everything and all of their whims are indulged. So they said by the time that he was 4 years old, he was a horrible, horrible brat. Like, he was just like... He knew that he could get whatever he wanted, and he was just, like, really tyrannical, and he was just, you know what I mean, which a lot of 4-year-olds are, I guess, even ones that are not aristocracy. But when he was, I believe, 6 years old, his mom had tried to, like, get him to be little friends with, like, the prince, you know, like, the prince or the prince's baby or whatever. It was, like, the same age. And apparently the Marquis de Sade, like, beat up on the prince. And they had to send the Marquis away to live with, like, an uncle who was an abbé. An abbot, rather. Abbé, as they would say in French. Did I even say that Marquis de Sade is obviously not his name? That's his title?
No, it's his title. His
name is actually Donatien Alphonse Francois. That is his name. De Sade. That's his name.
What's my middle name?
It is, yeah.
Francois. My middle name is Francois.
Well, sort of.
Yeah. Well... It's Francis.
It is. It's Francis.
But it means Francois.
Yeah. See,
the spelling.
My middle name is Hope, actually.
Yeah.
In case anyone was interested. But yeah, so when he's about 6 years old, he gets sent off to live with his uncle, who was an abbot. Now, according to some sources that I saw, it might have been right around this time that he started to develop what would later become his hatred for the church in general, and his, readiness to point out their hypocrisy, because apparently this abbot that he went to live with, even though he was supposedly like a clergyman and everything, was a total man whore, and also just like was preaching about one thing over here and then like doing all this like licentious bullshit over here.
I like how you said licentious.
Do you?
Yeah, I like how you said that. I almost rocked up. I like how you said that.
Man, you're drunk already.
Yeah.
It's so early.
And I got to make some patty melts for the break.
I know. In the break, we're going to make some patty melts. I mean, I ate one sandwich today.
Yeah.
It's like all I've eaten. I'm on a diet. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so...
She's losing weight, too.
Well, yeah.
Bitch getting skinny on me. Getting a waist like that. Booty. Yeah. Titties. I can't talk about it.
I know he's going all like. Well, we're talking about the Marquis de Sade, so it's relevant.
It happens.
It happens.
Big ass titties.
So yeah, so it might have been something like this, like him seeing like clergymen engaging in like going to prostitutes all the time and shit like that kind of got him thinking, oh, well, they're all hypocrites, because that was something that he said later on. And like I said, that was one of the things that he wrote that I could get on board with, because it's true, and I could see how him pointing out hypocrisy got him into trouble. But like I said, the shit that he did is not excusable, even though I do agree with some of the shit that he said.
This goes all the way back to Mississippi and the Baptist church and everything. Everybody's always known. The bad shit happened in the churches. Mm-hmm. If you were a pervy motherfucker, the first thing you want to do is try to get into a church. Because you would have access.
And you would have cover.
Yeah, you have cover. You say, you can't attack me. I'm a fucking part of the fucking Baptist church. And
yeah.
This shit's been going on for centuries.
Dennis knows all about that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not going to say anything bad about religion. I like all religions. I'm a mythicist. I'm a Christian mythicist. I don't believe any of that shit happened, but I like it. I like the stories.
Well, I like it in the sense that the same sense that I said, like Greek mythology.
And there was and just like Joseph Campbell says, there's a certain power in mythology.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Fucking saying the Lord's Prayer as you approach death. It's the same thing as kind of like fucking, you know, like a Comanche Indian's fucking death song. You know what I mean? When you know that your time is short and all that. I totally understand it. I totally understand it. I do.
I know you do.
Well, I've been there. You know what I'm talking about? Fucking when you come close to it, you know what I mean? You're going to need something to believe in. And it carries you through. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that it's false. It also doesn't mean that it's real. It just means that it's
true for you.
And everything is subjective and everything has to do with the time.
Yeah.
It's emotion. Humans are very emotional.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't believe any of that stuff, but I feel like I stay alive out of spite.
But that's another emotion.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm just saying it doesn't. Yeah. You don't need necessarily kind of a religious thing or like a spiritual thing or anything like that.
It's just whatever you believe in.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of subjective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my overriding emotion. Yeah. That's just like because All right, so like I said, this kind of like gave him an early education in hypocrisy, the hypocrisy of the church as he perceived it.
Yeah, the hypocrisy that's going on to this day.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean.
New stuff's coming out about those fuckers. Man.
Right. So like I said, this is something that I can get on board with him because
and I'm not anti-Catholic. I fucking love the Catholic style. You know what I mean? The way those churches are decorated, the songs, the fucking decorum and everything.
Well, yeah, every time I go to a city in Europe, I always go to all them
Catholic churches. That's the most gorgeous. Gothic of all fucking... It's the most...
stained glass windows, man.
Gothic shit. You know what I mean? I totally understand. I understand their
even if you don't believe in it, it's like you could just go just to look at it because
it's a great show. It's a great show, and man, I would love to have like a Catholic fucking ceremony of any kind.
Yeah.
Burial, wedding, whatever. The shit's fancy.
That shit's
fucking fancy, yeah. Yeah. That's really all it is. I'm very fancy. In case you're new to the show, I'm very educated on Christianity. I was raised as a Christian military academy. Christianity is a bunch of memes. All right? And it's a songs, and it's a certain gestalt, it's a style. I understand it.
Well, it's a subculture like any other subculture. Right. We all have our own, kind of signifiers.
Right. So I'm not against it, but we know what's going on. People are abusing this shit.
This is why we can't have nice things.
You can't have nice things. A motherfucker's going to infiltrate it.
Because there's a small percentage of people who just fuck it up for everyone else.
You're going to fuck it up for everybody else. Go running after other people's children. And this shit's been going on all the way back to the 1700s, and the Marquis saw it. And he's like, these dudes are fake.
Yeah, and
like I said... he was really disappointed in it.
Yeah.
Because he wanted to be a priest.
I can be, and I can be on board with him for that, because he, was a very vocal atheist when that was something you did not do.
Right.
So I respect that, like I said, but he was still a terrible person. Even though I did agree.
Yeah, we're not making him a good guy. No. We're just saying that.
Even though, I did agree with some things that he said, that doesn't mean that I thought he was awesome, because I think he was a shithead.
Yeah.
But yeah, so...
Motherfucker belonged behind bars.
He did, yeah. And like I said, rightfully so. He was actually... He spent, I think, more than 30 years of his life in prison.
You just wouldn't be able to trust him around your wife. He'd rape your wife. He'd rape your daughters. He might
no matter how young they were. Or your sons.
Or your sons.
He didn't care.
You just could not trust this
You could not leave anyone unattended around him, ever.
No.
Ever.
No. Today he would have been...
Old ladies. Nothing. Old men.
Yeah.
Children.
Yeah.
Cats, dogs, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, today he'd have been in prison today.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, like I said, by any measure.
By any measure.
So, because he was kind of like from an aristocratic family, so he gets he goes into the military. Now, I believe he was like put in there. He became, I think, a sub-lieutenant when he was 14 or 15 years old. Yeah. And he later like became a colonel, and he actually like served in the 7 Years' War. And after that, so which a lot of aristocrats did, but they were able to get kind of high up positions because of their money and whatnot. So after the 7 Years' War was over, what ended up happening was that, so the de Sade family, while socially very prominent, didn't have maybe as much money as some of the other aristocrats. And this happened a lot. It's like they were still, your name still meant something, but sometimes the ancestors had kind of squandered some of your fortune.
Yeah, well, this goes back to what I was saying. I said if you're on welfare, you're living like a nobleman. A lot of these noblemen didn't have any fucking money.
Yeah, I mean, they did have money, obviously, but not much.
Not enough to own anything.
Right.
And that's what I was talking about, especially something as small as a marquis. A marquis was a nobody in terms of fucking royalty.
It's kind of like...
It was a duke or a duchess. They had some shit.
In the de Sade family...
Or a baron.
And their line is still around nowadays, because I'll get into that at the end of the show, because I found a couple articles about that was really interesting. But apparently in that, like the male heirs, it would go marquis, count, marquis, count, marquis, count, marquis, count. Like that's how they did it. So, and like I said, this line is still around today. So when he gets out of the war, so what ended up happening there was that he fell in love with this younger girl from like this wealthy family. However, he like went to the girl's dad and like wanted to marry into that family, and the dad was like, well, you can't marry her, but you can marry her older sister, because the older sister was the one that was going to inherit the money. She was like next in line. And it happened that this family, the Montroy family, they had more money than the de Sades, but they didn't have the social status. So it was kind of a win-win. So so the Marquis ends up marrying this woman named Renee Pelagie Montroy, de Montroy. That was her family name. So even though this was like a marriage of convenience and a marriage like to kind of like, you know, a mutual benefit for both families, and later on, and I'll kind of get into this, but his wife apparently like participated in some of the shit that he was up to.
Oh, of course.
You know what I mean?
When she married him, that means that she had these predilections, if you ask me.
Well, no, because it was just an arrange. He wanted to marry the younger sister.
Okay, so they arranged them.
But the dad said, no, why don't you marry this one?
The way I interpreted it is that the wife was kind of tolerant. At least for a certain period of time.
She was, for a long time. Now, it's weird because they did a documentary on the Marquis de Sade for the Biography channel, and I watched that a couple of times. I watched another one that was done, like a British one, and then I've read like a whole bunch of different sources. Interestingly, the documentary on Biography did not mention that the wife, they kind of said, oh, well, the wife put up with it for a long time, and she did seem to love him, and blah, blah, blah. She did divorce him later, but it was like a long time in the future. However, most of the other sources that I read said that the wife not only tolerated it, but maybe participated or at least just let it happen. They don't know if she was like watching the shit or if she was participating in the shit, but she didn't stop it. She knew what he was doing. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm not really sure what her involvement was. But they do have, like, some letters between the two of them have survived because, like I said, he was in jail, like, a lot. So they wrote back and forth to each other. They did actually seem to have, like, some, you know, warm feelings or some love for each other. But I don't know how complicit she was in all of the shit that he did. She knew what he was up to, though. And it was some illegal shit. And she didn't do anything to stop it. She didn't report him. She didn't do nothing like that. So make of that what you will. Now, they did eventually end up having 3 children, 2 sons and 1 daughter. Now,
I wouldn't trust that motherfucker around any kids, including his own.
No. Now, but I don't think I've seen anything where he like did anything to his own kids. But it should be noted that after he died, one of his sons must have hated the shit out of him because after he died, he had all of his shit burned. Like
Right.
all of his, some of his shit survived, obviously, but he had like all of his manuscripts that he found and everything
I would
like that. He
suspect
destroyed all of
there
it.
was some shit up with him.
It might have been because, like I said, he really didn't seem to have any compunction about. I mean, he thought that the ultimate virtue was just like doing whatever the fuck you wanted,
Right.
and damn the consequences, or like not caring about anyone else. Like I said, that's sociopathy, but I don't
Right.
think he would have seen it that way. Because it does seem that he was aware that... It's weird because it seems like he was aware that as an aristocrat, he had gotten used to treating everyone else like an object for his own use.
Yeah.
So he seemed like he was aware of that, but he still did it anyway and didn't feel bad about it. And in fact, he almost seemed to kind of laud that, like make kind of a philosophy out of that whole
He's
idea.
rationalizing what he's
Yeah,
doing.
that's exactly what he was doing. It's very odd, to read him because it seems contradictory, but I don't know. Like, you can see how someone that was raised that way...
Well, he had that kind of nobility attitude of where you're here for me.
Yeah, he did have that.
All right. And I'm going to do what I want to you, and that's...
And you can't
should be
complain, and
happy
why
about
are you
that.
complaining
You're
about
right,
it?
yeah,
Because
you should be happy about that.
that's your station in life.
Right, yeah,
and
so
that
that's what he's doing.
he definitely did feel like he was superior, and which a lot of aristocrats did.
Yeah.
Not a lot of them did shit to the extent that the Marquis de Sade did, or at least didn't write about it like he did. Maybe they were all doing shit like
There's
that.
a lot of stuff in the American kind of like Declaration of Independence that fucking kind of calls out the European nobility and their idea of that they were born of a different means. There was a lot of European nobles thought that they weren't created by natural means, that they were created by God. That's some
They
weird,
came right out of God's
That's some
butthole.
weird shit. That's what they mean by all men's being created equal. What that meant back in those days is that we were all created by sex.
Yeah, we all came out of vagina.
Right. And
So don't get all uppity about
a lot of European nobles didn't see it that way. They were kind of considered themselves to be created by supernatural means through their interpretation of the Bible. That's some weird shit.
Yeah, like
when
an
you think-
angel brought them. It was like,
right.
"Ah."
That their parents, they weren't created by sex. They were created by God. That's some weird shit when you think about it.
Well, yeah, they definitely did seem to see themselves as a race apart, a species apart, even.
Yeah. Well, it's because the way they interpreted stuff in the Old and the New Testament is that God created nobles and kings to rule over you.
Yeah.
Okay. They
Noblesse
were created the
oblige, did they call
same
it
way other people were created. Other
With
people
all
were
that dirty, filthy humping.
fucking. Right. Other people were created by fucking. But not the nobles and not the kings and not the royal people. They were created by God. So really, a lot of that all men being created equal.
Yeah, that was a...
It was. They were talking about. They were saying all people are created by natural means.
Yeah. So get the fuck over
So
yourself.
get the fuck over yourself. That's what that meant.
Unstated, but implicit.
Yeah. Right.
So obviously, since he was an avowed libertine, his marriage, I believe he married when he was about 23 years old. None of this stopped any of his sexual proclivities. So a couple months into his marriage, he starts an affair with this actress named La Boisvasson. He also started an affair with his wife's sister, who was the one that he had wanted to marry to start with. He also started buying other properties where he would hire prostitutes and take them to these properties. Now, even though the women are prostitutes and they're being paid for their services, the shit that he did to them was not okay, y'all.
He was doing that Bateman shit from American Psycho with him.
Yeah.
If you ever read that book.
That is American Psycho is a very Sadian type
Yeah.
Because basically, even though you're paying a prostitute for her services, okay, it's like once you start doing some shit that she didn't agree to, then that shit's not cool.
That's rape.
Yeah, and that's essentially what he was doing. He would bring the prostitutes to the house under, we're just going to do sex like a
Standard
prostitute
straight
would.
shit, yeah.
And then when they get there, he either drugs them, ties them up, and all this other, and then like starts whipping them and shit. Now he would have them whip him too, because he was like apparently a masochist as well as a sadist.
He was a sadomasochist.
Yeah.
He liked to deliver pain. He liked to receive it. So you're talking about like an Albert Fish style motherfucker. If you know what Albert Fish was.
Like, did we do a show about Albert Fish? We did
a show on Albert Fish. Yeah, you can go back to that one. That was that.
Like I said, that's why nowadays I feel like Marquis de Sade would be like, he would be on like every fucking predator list.
Yeah,
in the
he'd be in
world.
prison.
Because he has the very, even if he didn't kill anybody, and he may very well have, and they didn't find out about it, it's possible. But he definitely has that type of mindset. And he has that type of, like I said, that type of rationalization of why he does the things he does. And he's almost trying to like make it into some like highfalutin philosophical
He's trying to make it fucking like sanctimonious.
Yeah, and it's like, it's funny to read it nowadays because it's like, oh, just stop it. Yeah. It's like you just want to like rape people and torture people and act like it's like some big and then fucking
to be
statement.
Tortured, and to be tortured and to be raped, because we're talking about a dude that he'd take it up the ass too. You know what I'm talking about? So,
like I said, he didn't really, he just, his mission in life
was like Albert Fish.
Yeah, his mission in life was just to break every taboo, like every stricture against morality.
Yeah, and there was a religious element. He was mad at his disappointment of the church, if you ask me.
Well,
which
clearly.
that's very much
and he took it way too far.
Yeah, and that's a lot like Albert Fish. Albert Fish thought that he could do whatever he wanted to anyone. Children and women and fucking eating little girls and raping little girls and boys. He could do that if he wanted to, as long as he paid for it, like Jesus did. So he'd stick needles up in himself and fucking when they electrocuted him, he still had needles up in his taint. You're talking about a dude that would stick a needle so deep in himself he couldn't get it out. And that's paying for those sins. Well, sadomasochism, that's
which, like I said, I don't...
sadism and masochism, that's Marquis de Sade.
Yeah. I don't... See, that's the thing, and that's where I think a lot of, a lot of people that maybe kind of lionize him a little bit, I don't think it's as common, especially not in the United States, because in the U.S. he's usually seen as a villain. But it does seem like I don't have a problem with a lot of the sexual stuff that he did, as long as the people were consenting. It's like, if people are consenting and of age, do whatever the fuck you want. I don't care.
We know them.
That's what I mean. It's like, beat each other up, eat people's shit. I don't know, as long as you brush your teeth afterward, I don't really care. As long as everyone, as long as everyone is on the same page, you just get up to whatever you want to. I don't have a problem with that at all. The problem I have with him is that he would kidnap people, he would drug people, he would tie them up against their will, he would do shit against people's will.
He was a fucking rapist.
Yeah.
And that's a rapist. And now it's the same thing fucking Fish was doing.
Yeah.
Except it was children, and he was killing them. And here's the deal. I think if the Marquis had seen Albert Fish, he wouldn't have had a problem with that.
I don't think he would have either, and
that
bothers me.
Okay.
Because, I mean, the shit that he wrote about it...
He would have rationalized that.
Like, for example, in 120 Days of Sodom, which is a novel, the dudes in that story who are four, like, kind of higher up, like, it's like a banker and a bishop and all this other kind of stuff. Now, they torture these... they're children, teenagers. They torture them and do it, and they murder them. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying that Marquis de Sade murdered anyone in real life. If, like I said, he may very well have. I don't know. I've never heard of it. But, that's a fictional novel. But I do feel like the fact that he wrote that as a fantasy kind of makes me feel like that somebody that did it in real life, that he would be okay with that.
Yeah, sure he would. Because
the weird thing about him,
he would have liked Fish. I think
he probably would have. Yeah, the weird thing about him, though, is that he was very, like I said, he's a complicated person. He was very against the death penalty because he saw that as an authority, the state, like, imposing their will on a person, and that wasn't allowed. But he didn't have a problem with murder, like someone just murdering someone because they wanted to, or because that person wronged them or whatever. I kind of understand
what he's talking about. The European death penalty, they were killing people for nothing.
Well, yeah.
For shit that, it wasn't very, wasn't very important.
That's what I mean. You do have to understand him in the context of his time also.
Yeah, of the time, right.
So, it's, maybe when you look at it through that lens, it's not as weird. Because it does sound weird to say, oh, well, you know, he was against the death penalty, but then he was okay with murder. But he saw them as two different things. And like I said, he was very...
England was hanging people for basically fucking minor offenses.
Well, and as we'll get into in a little bit, I mean, even in France back then in the 1700s, sodomy was punishable by death.
Yeah.
Whether you were gay, straight, it didn't matter.
That's not even an offense today.
You go in the butt... If they
die.
catch you, they're...
Right.
Although, in practice...
Yeah, they didn't actually do it.
It was usually only... I believe I saw something that said only like 5 people were actually burned at the stake for that. But they would usually add it onto charges, like other charges. Right. And then they would end up burning you at the stake for other charges as well.
They had weird ways of fucking rationalizing their laws back then.
Yeah, well, you know.
You know what I mean? Yeah, they did. Because... They didn't always follow their own laws.
Yeah, well, who does? It's like, that's kind of what happens. I'm not saying we shouldn't have laws. Obviously, you should. But it's like...
We have to think we're dealing with white people. White people will kind of make up laws and then not follow them. Or
like get around, like go a little sideways.
Them and their version. Right. You can't really take laws that seriously in European culture. Just because a law said something didn't necessarily mean that's what would
That's
happen.
what I mean. It's one thing that it was on the books. It's another thing. Because, I mean,
they didn't actually apply
even
a lot
some
of that
places
shit.
in the U.S. have some laws that are still on the books that are not enforced.
In Mississippi, your ass could get locked up for doing laundry on the wrong fucking day.
Yeah.
That's never going to be enforced.
Honestly, I think in some states or some counties in the U.S., sodomy is still technically illegal.
Yeah, but that's never going to be applied.
But no one's going to... No one's going to enforce it. What are they going to do? Like, look in your fucking window with a telescope or some shit?
And I
guarantee... catch you doing some butt stuff?
And I guarantee you the average lawyer in those states, fucking, they don't even fucking know about those laws. They do know
They
them.
probably
just
don't,
laugh
because
at them.
why the fuck would anybody...
Nobody would know.
We got real problems.
So it was kind of like the same thing back then. The concept of law and order and courts is actually kind of new, and it's experimental. Europe, and just America, too, operated mostly on tradition more than it did law.
Yeah.
You know? They had laws. They weren't always evenly applied.
Yeah.
Just depending on the situation. Law isn't what it's cracked up to be. We didn't even really have cops.
Yeah.
Until like what, the 30s? Like 20s or 30s?
That, yeah.
And the cop of the 20s and the 30s would be like a mall cop or something.
Yeah.
Really, there were only like, what is it, Frank Hamer, or fucking, you know what I mean? It's maybe some of the elite policemen, you could probably consider them cops, but you could get rid of all this stuff today and it really wouldn't make a big difference, I don't think. Not all the time. Not in the big picture. But go ahead, Jen.
Well, actually, we're like an hour and 15 minutes or something like that, so maybe we should stop and take a break.
We're going to take a break
refresh
from it.
drinks.
Yeah.
Maybe grab a bite to eat.
Right.
And then come back and
We'll
record
finish
the second half of the show, talk a little bit more about the Marquis de Sade.
Yeah.
So stay tuned, you guys. What?
No, so we have enough time to wrap up his story in the second half?
Yeah, we'll see how long it takes, like I said. Okay. So we'll be back in just a few minutes.
What the hell's going on here? Fighting a minute ago. What are you guys doing? Dun dun dun.
You love true crime. I love true crime. And I've spent the last 3 years compiling a series of the most intriguing unsolved murders of the 20th century. It's called The Faceless Villain, and Volume 3 is available now. Featuring such fascinating cases as the Ketty murders, the Carrie Babies case, the Frog Boys, the Alcasar murders, and the Inokashira Park dismemberment incident, The Faceless Villain Volume 3 is an involving exploration of unsolved slayings spanning the years from 1980 to 1999.
Pick up your copy in print or ebook formats on Amazon, or download the audiobook version from audible.com, and get ready for a chilling journey through modern crime history.
Oh, okay. Break is done. I fed everybody.
We had patty melt.
Yeah, patty melt. This is a good patty melt. Thick
It
meat.
was really good.
Medium rare. Diced onions. Cheese. Pickles.
Yeah. I love pickles.
Thousand Island dressing on fucking artisanal bread.
Yeah, it was lovely.
Yeah, done in the pan.
Soaking up all that alcohol. We also
Yeah.
got 2 more alcoholic drinks. I am
Right,
actually
yeah.
drinking. Usually I have screwdrivers.
Yeah.
I was out of vodka and I didn't realize.
Yes, I
However,
made that shit for her. I made that
I
shit.
did have a bottle that I had forgotten that I bought a
Jim
long time
Beam.
ago of Jim Beam apple.
Yeah, that shit's good.
Turns out Jim Beam apple and orange juice taste just fine.
Yeah, hold on, let me try it. I tried it for her, and I was like, that's good.
I never thought about mixing those two things before, but it's actually
It's like a Sex on the Beach.
yeah,
kind
it's
of.
actually pretty good. It's kind of sweet, but you know,
Yeah.
I like Jim Beam apple. I know that's like probably
Right.
not cool and everything, but
Yeah, I'm drinking Red Bull citrus with a splash of lime, a splash of orange, silver tequila.
there you go.
Yeah, real good.
So we have like a little bit different drinks than normal. All right. So when we left, we were talking about the Marquis de Sade and how he had married for money, you know, and for familial kind of shit.
They did
And
that
how
back
he
then.
was also like banging the wife's much younger sister. Also, he had at least one other apartment in Paris where he would take all the prostitutes. Now, for many years, he would hire prostitutes, bring them to these apartments, do horrible things to them, sexual assault, I mean, essentially. Now, he got a reputation, and this is like, this to me, this kills me, because, as I said, aristocrats, you could get away with a lot, as long as you kept shit on the down low.
Yeah.
Like, don't go around, like, flaunting it or anything. So, I don't know.
Well, the laws were weird.
Yeah.
Like sodomy and things like having sex with people you weren't married to. What do you call it?
Adultery.
Adultery. That might be illegal. But that doesn't mean you can't do some fucking wild ass shit, because there was stuff that the law hadn't thought of. And they were doing that.
And people with money, I mean,
They
then
can get away
as
with
now,
shit, yeah.
people with money can get away with pretty much anything.
Yeah.
Unless you're too, like, egregious or too, like, open about it, which I
Yeah.
think was the Marquis de Sade's problem. Now, what ended up happening during this time period was that he was hiring prostitutes so much and doing so much horrible shit to them against their will. Like, essentially, as I said, you know, he'd get them to the house and then he would, like, tie them up or drug them or whatever and beat them up and do shit that they didn't agree to. And so many of them reported him that not only was he put under police surveillance, like, they fucking didn't arrest him at the time, but they watched him. Also, the authorities told all the Paris brothels in the area not to send him any more prostitutes.
Yeah, and he was doing.
That's how bad it was.
And he was doing weird shit based on memory. You know what I read a long time ago. He would have this manservant. He had this.
That comes about a little bit later. Yeah.
Is that coming later?
Yeah.
He had this manservant who was, I guess, was bisexual, is what you want to call him. You know, is how he chose him, and he'd call hookers over and do weird shit to them, like whip them and get them to enact like religious stuff, to make them act like nuns, and they would make them pray, and then there'd be like crucifixes.
And they would, like,
and
step on him
step
or,
on
like,
a crucifix,
or piss on him or something.
right?
Like that.
And then he'd like flip it around to where, you know, he's Jesus, and that
Yeah.
just all kinds of weird shit.
Which, in a way,
big
it's
into that.
almost kind of like, yeah, he was getting in trouble for, like, abusing the prostitutes, but it almost seemed like, at the time, like, the blasphemy was a
Yeah.
bigger deal.
Yeah, I think there were more.
That seemed to, like, offend the sensibilities
were-
of the people at large.
I think they were more mad about the Jesus angle.
I think they were, too.
Yeah.
It seems like the blasphemy was a bigger deal than the actual abusing of human beings.
And he was an equal opportunity fuckover. I mean, he would even put himself on. He'd have the prostitutes whip him and put stinging nettle on him while he was being Jesus, and then he would like jerk off to Jesus and then put Jesus up in his booty. I mean, it was fucking weird. It's like the kind of shit that fucking Albert Fish was into.
That's what
Yeah,
I mean.
dog.
And in a way, like,
Yeah.
I can see why some why some intellectuals or some like modern people might admire him for his breaking of taboos, some of which are bullshit, and there was no reason for them to be a taboo because what business is it of anyone's? But the problem with him, like I said, why he's such a problematic figure is that, even though he had some good ideas, yes, some of those taboos needed to be broken. Yes, like, it's good that he opened that discussion into various fetishes and everything like that. And some of that shit was okay as long as it was consenting people. But the problem was a lot of the shit that he was doing was not with consenting people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was weirder than that, though, too, because you look at it this way. He was offending the church.
Yeah.
And in those days, that was fucking very dangerous ground because the church the church in Europe in the 1700s was kind of like the equivalent of the federal government. The European monarchies, the royal families were kind of like state governments. And overseeing them was this fucking Catholic empire, this church. It'd be kind of like committing a federal offense.
Yeah.
Is what he was doing. That doesn't exist today. That's long gone in Europe. But back in his day, what he was doing was kind of like the equivalent of making federal offenses.
Yeah, and in some ways,
really
I feel like even though he did get in trouble for abusing people,
it was more about that Jesus angle.
I feel like the blasphemy was perceived as a bigger deal at the time. That's why he got in trouble. Because like I said, a lot of aristocrats were doing similar kind of shit to what he was doing. Because like I said, a prostitute was kind of considered, well, you paid her so you could do anything you wanted, whether she wanted you to do it or not. I don't think anybody thought anything of that at the time. But the fact that he was getting prostitutes, not only like that he was doing things against their will, but he was also getting them to do blasphemous things.
Yeah, and people weren't that important in that
exactly, time. That's what I'm saying.
Think about it, people weren't that important. What was important in Europe in the 1700s was the church and nobility. Yeah. They were important.
Yeah.
Your average person,
no.
Fuck them.
And
there was lots of them, and they came and went, and they were created by fucking. Everybody else was created by magical means. You know what I'm talking about?
That's what I mean.
That's the way they saw
the magical stork brought them.
Magical stork.
Well, yeah, and I definitely do feel like the Marquis de Sade, as much as he railed against authority and against the church, he was of a piece with that because he had the same mentality that they had at the end of the day, because he really felt like
he was better than
that. He was better, and that other people were beneath him, and they were there as objects to use as he wished. So he wasn't as transgressive as maybe he thought he was.
No, he was actually kind of playing into the fucking whole idea of aristocracy.
Yeah. Because he used it to his advantage many times.
Yeah. But I think he knew that. He enjoyed that, though. He's like, fuck you. I'm going to do I'm going to do what I want.
Yeah. But like you said, a lot of the shit was that, he was justifying shit that he wanted to do.
Yeah, he was trying to justify shit that he wanted to do.
That's the long and short.
You're dealing with a sexual fucking offender.
Yeah.
He's a sex offender.
Yeah.
That's what
he was just trying to be high-minded about
exactly.
it. I guess.
Exactly.
But yeah, so during this time period, as I said, he did abuse so many prostitutes that he got like kind of a bad reputation around Paris. A lot of brothels would not send him women anymore because of the reputation that he got, because he'd been reported so many times. He did actually get arrested and imprisoned a few times, like for like minor bullshit kind of sentences over this time period. Probably more for the blasphemy shit than for the abuse shit, which is sad, but that's probably how it worked out. Now, there wasn't any really big major deal until 1768. Now, this is what is known as the Rose Keller affair. Now, what ended up happening was apparently Marquis de Sade was strolling down the street or whatever in Paris, and he comes across this woman named Rose Keller. Now, some sources say she's a prostitute, although most sources say that she was just like a widow and she was just like a beggar. She was in her 30s.
That might be the same thing back in those days.
Maybe. Though. It's like, but she was kind of like in the street. She was begging for money because, her husband had died and she didn't have any source of income anymore. So the Marquis comes across her and he offers her a job in his house as a housekeeper, right? So she needed money, so she said okay. Now she didn't agree to be a prostitute or nothing like that. He just said
she was hot too.
Well, maybe she might have been. I don't know.
You know how he is.
Yeah, although like I said, he doesn't really seem to have any. Although he was like into super young women. This woman
knew what beauty was.
I mean, I've seen her age anywhere from 30 to 36, so she wasn't like an old woman, although probably like 30 to 36-year-old women looked a lot older back then than they do nowadays. But
Hard to say.
But I'm not really sure what she looked like.
They would have probably been considered to be a little bit older than they would be considered to be today.
Today, yeah.
But,
that's what I'm saying. And honestly, the Marquis, when he went after prostitutes, he liked them real young. Yeah. Like 13.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Well, that was the prime of life in the 1700s.
That's what they thought of
12, 13, 14, you know.
So apparently he comes across this woman who's begging in the street, and he says, hey, come to my house. I need a housekeeper. So she said, okay. Now, when she gets to the house, he locks her in a room and ties her face down on a bed and starts whipping her and reportedly then pouring hot wax into the wounds.
Yeah.
Isn't that nice?
That's some shit they would have done in the 90s, though. Fucking kinky-ass goth girls and shit.
Well, like I said, but that was all, like, consensual
That's
shit.
consensual. This is not consensual.
This is not consensual. She did not agree to this shit. She thought she was just going to go clean up his fucking house, and all of a sudden... Now, he said later on that, I was just putting ointment on the wounds. That it was, and I'm just like, come on, no one buys that. Give me a fucking break.
Come on.
So she was like tied up. Now she managed to escape. She gets out of the bindings and she jumps out, like she busts open like a second floor window and jumps out of the shit. Yeah. And she goes and like finds some other women like in a barn or something like that. It's like, hey, there's this fucking crazy person over there and he just like cut me up and poured hot wax on my shit. So they went and like reported it. So she went and
put
reported
herself
it.
in her fucking shoes. For all she knows, this motherfucker's gonna kill you.
Well, that's what I would assume.
Yeah, she don't know who this
Wouldn't
dude
you
is.
assume that?
You don't know who this dude is.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I would assume this is a serial killer.
Right.
And it's like, I know that maybe back then the perception was different. It's like, oh, well, okay, this is just what happens because you're a woman back then and you just get fucking abused and you're just used to it.
They didn't know what BDSM was.
They didn't. So it's like the
scene.
fact that you get tied up and whipped all of a sudden when you thought you were just going to be cleaning this dude's house.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, yeah, I'm out of here. And that's what she did. She was like, yeah, I'm fucking out of here.
Yeah, it was a surprise session.
I guess that's what I mean. That's what horrible people say. Rape is just surprise sex.
Yeah, just a surprise session. That's like what's his name? That couple that we know.
That's fucked up.
That couple that we know with the fucking lawyer and what's her name?
We're not saying their names.
Yeah. They always got like some girl with them.
Well, they always have a third.
Yeah. That motherfucker tries to come at me fucking trying to be all sexy and shit. I'll call him. I say, listen, little Mussolini. I'll rub on his head. He looks just like a little miniature Mussolini.
Well, he
wants to call me a Nazi and everything. His fascist ass. Fucking, you know what I mean? With his lawyer, I ain't gonna say anything. You know who I'm talking about.
I know you do.
Yeah.
You're just kind of like going.
That bitch is so jealous of me.
You think?
I think he is.
Yeah, maybe so.
When he looks at you, he gets jealous.
Well.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I'll smack that motherfucker.
You're so drunk already. So this poor woman jumps
I'm drunk, but I'm having a good time.
You are, yeah.
I'm in a good mood.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
It's Saturday night, you guys. Well,
yeah,
I know
it's
not when this goes up, but
we got a pandemic upon us. It's Saturday night. We didn't want to go out. We just wanted to do the show.
Well, I wanted to go out, but we had to do the show.
It's a weird time. It's a weird time though, with fucking finances and everything. So we decided to stay in
and record the show for you guys.
Right.
That's how we do.
Yeah.
We usually do them on Saturday nights, unless we go out, in which case we try to do them Friday nights or
maybe
Saturday
next week
afternoon.
We'll go out.
Yeah. So this woman like reports his ass to the authorities. Now the family, who at this stage, his extended family as well as his wife's family, were not happy about his shenanigans, let's call them that, but there hadn't been anything too egregious up to this point, so they're just kind of like, whatever, that's just what those types of dudes do, I guess. So what they did in this case was, even though she reported him to the authorities, the family paid her off so that she would not testify. So they were trying to, like, keep everything, like, under wraps or whatever. However, this incident, as well as another incident later on, basically, his mother-in-law, you gotta love this woman, his mother-in-law, the Madame de Montreuil, this was one of the incidents that caused her to basically say, fuck this guy forever, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to get his stupid ass imprisoned.
Yeah.
So, and she had the money to do it.
The Marquis...
She was determined.
The Marquis collected an arch enemy. A female
She was
arch
his
enemy.
nemesis.
Yeah, she was going to try to take this motherfucker down.
At it.
Which I can understand it, you know what I mean? Women have these protective instincts, and he was out there abusing, and a bitch gonna have to take a motherfucker down.
Well, and he wasn't only just fucking around, and he was humping her youngest daughter, who was only like a teenager. She was 13 or 14 at the time, and he like took her to like fucking Italy and shit like that, like later, like without the mother's consent. But another thing, too, was that the Marquis was making her whole family look bad. Yeah. And she did not like that, not one bit.
He's just lucky I wasn't around. I don't have any children, but if he was doing that to my fucking daughter, and me knowing him and what he was... I'd have killed that motherfucker.
Well, most people that have children would have done... Like I said, if you hurt my cat, I would do something like that to you. So I can imagine...
You come after a Pookie, your shit's
what
going on the fucking menu.
Right. That's what I mean.
Going on the fucking...
You were going to wish you were dead if you weren't after I'm done with you.
I used to do that kind of shit for a living with the U.S. Army. I mean, it ain't a joke. It's not a joke.
That's what I mean. And she's not even... She's our child, but she's not a human child.
Sometimes you got to throw a motherfucker into the void.
Yeah.
There's nothing there.
And I think I've mentioned this on the show before. Like I said, I don't have any human children, but I do have a cat child. And,
that's it. Yeah.
And if you did something like that, I would not only kill you, I would make you into stew and eat your ass and then shit you out.
I can't understand it at all. We guard Pookie.
Yeah.
We guard Pookie. I'm watching her. She goes out in the fucking backyard, and I'm keeping an eye over her. I'm even fucking looking up for hawks and shit. Don't fuck with that cat.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. How could human beings care so much about a damn kitty cat? I love that cat.
I do too.
Well, she crawls up on a chest and looks down at you fucking when you're in the night when you're look at these fucking crazy ass eyes.
Well, she likes to in the middle of the night because she usually sleeps by me. She usually sleep by my leg or like up by my elbow or like in my armpit or something. She likes to do that. But if she's out running around in the night, it's like every now and then, like every couple hours, I think she likes to come up and check to see if we're all right or see what we're doing. Yeah. So every now and then, like it'll be 3:00 in the morning and I'll feel little feet. And then her little face will be like right there, like through the blankets with her big old beady eyes. And she'll be like, "What are you there? Are you all right?"
I watched a damn elephant paint a picture of another elephant with a foot. I was impressed as shit.
Elephants are very intelligent.
Yeah.
They even have like elephant cemeteries or like they mourn their dead and everything. Animals are way smarter than we give them credit for. I always thought that.
As a human, you know what I mean, we're very human centric. Over time I've kind of realized that there are certain animals that are gifted. Elephants, cats, dogs.
Yeah.
You know, they're
well, and like I said, pretty much anyone that's had a pet for any
monkeys
amount of time will understand. And I
used to think it was just some kind of an AI or a mechanical thing. You know what I mean? Like
the cat just loves you because you feed them. Or something like that.
No,
I don't think that's the case.
No.
Well, and honestly, I was just reading.
It's more like the consciousness of a child.
Yeah, I was just reading a study the other day that they had done studies on cats because people have a perception that cats are not as lovable or as human-centric as dogs are, or like not as about humans.
Oh, that's not true.
But I don't think that's true at all. I mean, it depends on the cat, obviously, but
a human will choose human companionship over food.
Yeah, a cat will. Yeah. They've showed that most cats will choose human companionship over food or toys or anything else. Yeah. You know, not all of them, obviously, but like I said, they're just like people. They have different personalities. Yeah. Because we have 2 cats, and one of our cats is very aloof. Yeah. Like, she'll hang out with you sometimes, like, if she's lonely, but then she's like, fuck off, whatever. I don't, like, really care. And she'll kind of go spend time by herself. But Baby Cookie is not like that at all. She is very much, like, always wanting to be involved.
Talk about the cat like it's her child.
It is. Well,
I understand it. Yeah. I understand.
She wants to be involved in, like, everything you're doing. It's like, oh, hey, you doing laundry? Can I help you? Let me sit on the towels. I'm going to help you out.
We got a lot of people in the audience, you know, they have animals, you know. We have animals too. We understand it. I mean,
they're part of your family.
For those of you who are not regulars to the show, I'm not that much of a softie, really. You know what I mean?
He's not.
I'm an ex-soldier. I even fucking hunted a lot, killed a lot of deer, a lot of rabbits, killed a lot of squirrels. There's certain animals that are very special. And I think it has a lot to do with selective breeding and just the way they are. Some animals are pets. Other animals, like elephants, they just have a very good consciousness. And, you know, monkeys and chimpanzees are monkeys and great apes. You know what I mean? They're sophisticated.
I see them
I
basically.
just got respect for them. I got respect for them.
I see them basically the same way you would see like a human child.
Yeah, they're on the realm of
Intellectually, they're pretty much.
Yeah, they're
the
about
same.
like on the level of a child. You know, but a child could be bad, and so these animals can be bad too. It's just
that's
that
what
you
I'm
know,
saying.
some animals don't. You know, like certain,
It's not. It's a continuum. It's not
Right.
like animals are different than
Yeah.
humans. They're not. They're not.
Well, they don't have the same abilities.
No, but they have a lot of the
But
same emotions and a lot of the
I
same.
think what we're talking about is that there are some animals that have consciousness. They have
Yeah.
they are self-aware.
Yeah,
Many of them are.
yeah, and I think our cat is one of those.
Yeah, they know what they are. They know how they feel.
Because I think she thinks she's a person.
Yeah.
She definitely comes across like she thinks she's a tiny fuzzy person.
It's not paranormal or anything. It's just that.
Well, like I said, because I've had other
Wait,
cats before, and I
right.
didn't feel that way about them. But you know what I mean.
Certain cats are.
You know, even though I love cats, but
Yeah.
in general, but
Some cats are very aware. and
she's
other
the
ones aren't.
first one that seemed like
Like a person.
a person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like interacted like a person.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. So as I was saying, so the Marquis's mother-in-law essentially was like, after this whole shit happened with Rose Keller and you're like, you know, ruining my family name or whatever, she's like, all right, I'm going to get this fucker. So what she ended up doing, she goes to the king and she gets what is called a lettre de cachet, which essentially that's, if I remember my French correctly, is hidden letter or secret letter. That is basically a thing where the king is saying that you can get arrested and imprisoned without access to courts. So it's kind of like a workaround. Like whenever we catch your dumb ass, we're just going to throw you in jail. You're not going to have a trial or anything like that. So she got one of those against him. So at this stage, so it kind of goes on for a few years where he's kind of like running away. He kind of like ran to Italy for a while, like to kind of lay low and whatever. Now, 4 years later in 1772, this is when we're talking about his manservant. Now, he had a manservant named Latour.
Yeah, now hold on. 1772. In the United States, you know what's happening around this time. It's kind of weird when you think about it.
Yeah?
Yeah, in a few more years, they're going to declare independence from England. And
American Revolution.
there's the brewing insurgency going on.
And a lot of it, and a lot of the
Motherfuckers want out.
ideas from it came
Yeah.
from, you know, French revolutionary
Right,
writers
and there's
things like that.
French writing.
Even though that went terribly wrong. But
French
you know,
Enlightenment writing is now
Yeah.
fucking influencing
Yep.
fucking American colonists. You got motherfuckers you got badasses like Franklin. And Benjamin Franklin, you know, they laughed at him in England, but very modern guy. You know,
he was in a lot of ways.
very modern, living in sin with fucking his girlfriend and living the life of a modern dude now. You know, you read up on Franklin. Franklin was a fucking cool motherfucker.
He
was.
did seem very cool.
Very cool. Taking air baths. He was a nudist.
Yeah.
He liked young women. He liked kind of.
But at least everybody knew. Like I don't think he raped anybody.
No, he didn't rape it. Everything was about liberty and freedom of choice.
That's what I mean. I feel like all the
And-
chicks that hung out with him were like
Yeah.
wanted to.
Yeah, and
Which,
evidently,
that's fine.
in France and in the United States,
The French loved Benjamin
they
Franklin.
fucking loved
They
that
loved
dude,
Benjamin.
and it was because
It was coonskin cat.
dude had game. Dude had game.
Even
The-
though he
the
wasn't
French-
a good looking dude,
No,
but it's
he
like
knew how to play it.
He just like worked it.
He knew how
That
to
just
play it.
goes to show it doesn't really matter what you look like.
No, it's your internal spirit.
It's your aura, man.
And he was okay. Franklin was the first American celebrity,
yeah.
international celebrity.
Yep.
I would say be Franklin. That coonskin cap shit was was bullshit. He knew that was some fucking hokey American crap. So he
Well, he
wore
knew that everybody would like fixate on
Yeah,
that
they
because
fixated
they
on
didn't
that
have
shit.
it like in
They didn't
Europe,
have
so they
that.
would think it was exotic.
Right. And dude scored a lot of trim, evidently.
He That's what I've heard.
Yeah, scored a lot of trim.
I don't know how much of it was just him bragging or other people bragging.
The French said he was fucking tearing it up. So
okay,
that's the sources.
And that's kind of a French thing.
The French said that he was tearing it up at the court there because he understood he was playing French courtesan games.
Yeah.
In France.
And like I said, this is another thing that makes me think that the Marquis de Sade was just the worst, because if the French are condemning you, then it must be bad.
There's a problem. Well,
because the French are all about that shit.
He was violating liberty, though.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean, and that's the line that I have to cross.
Right.
Like I said,
he was taking freedom from others. When
you
say, how free can a free society be? A free society can be as free as it can be, but it's not free to take freedom from others.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Without a due process.
Yeah.
And a due process in American terms means it has to be a serious process in a court to find out if you've committed some kind of a crime, and then they take your liberty.
Yeah, and I mean, I get, like I said, that's why I don't agree that the Marquis de Sade's writings or anything like that should be banned, because that's just writing. However, his actions are what, because obviously he was taking advantage of people for his own ends.
Yeah, well,
and that is always wrong.
That goes back to the American values of the fucking First Amendment. You're free to say and to create whatever you want in art.
Yeah.
But you can't do it.
Yeah, don't do it.
Because that might actually take liberty from another person. Everything has to be consensual. That's what the First Amendment is all about.
That's why it's like, make all the porn you want as long as everyone in it is okay with it. As long as it's not child porn, as long as you're not making a snuff film, as long as you're do whatever you want. Like
everyone has to have consent.
Yeah, like people can watch it or not.
Right.
But I think that people should be able to make that decision for themselves. I don't think movies should be cut or books should be banned or anything like that.
And I don't care what Epstein says. There are certain people that can't give consent. They're too young.
Yeah, and we've all agreed up to a certain age. And like I said, you could argue about what that age is. You could argue if it's 18. You could argue if it's 16. You could argue like other things. But obviously, a child is not the same as an adult, obviously.
In Mississippi, according to the last law I read, consent was 14. That's
a little bit on the...
Well, it's old school.
That's what I mean.
That's
14 is that's young.
14 was the age of consent last I heard.
I think an argument could be made for 16, although I'm uncomfortable with that.
But I think 16 in Mississippi is when they could get married. And
I think people can get married in Florida at 16 too. Although, I don't know if the law has changed recently, but that's what it was last I remember.
A lot of those laws are so old they haven't really been challenged because most people don't.
It's not something that you coming up. Think about, right?
It's not coming.
Yeah,
up.
because most people nowadays don't get married till they're in their 20s or 30s, so it's like it doesn't really come up. But yeah, 14, I'm uncomfortable with that. I'm a little uncomfortable with 16, although an argument could be made for 16. I think
the feds have agreed that...
I think 18 is a good
The feds have agreed that 18 is the time in which a girl can give consent to do porn.
Yeah. And I'm all right with that.
Yeah, that's about right.
I mean, that seems about right.
I think that's right, yeah.
You're still pretty young at 18.
If you can go to war at 18 as a man, then you can decide you're going to do porn.
Yeah, seriously. So if you're going to make porn 18, you should make everything 18. Right. Drinking age, everything, that should just be 18 because we've just decided that that's when adulthood is. And that seems like a good age.
I think the Mississippi 14-year-old consent thing, I think what they're talking about is the high school age.
Yeah.
Is that it's not rape. But I think they're talking about other people around that time, around that age.
See, that's another thing. Now,
I don't think they're taking into account statutory.
Yeah, see, that's a different thing.
So
because, like I said, if two 14-year-olds are having sex, I don't think you should prosecute either one of those people because that's not. They're both 14-year-olds.
Man, I was 12, 13, lusting after girls that age.
That's what I mean. A lot of people, a lot of teenagers have sex, and I knew teenagers that had sex with 13, 14, 15. It's like as long as you're having sex with someone the same age or maybe a year or two older, I don't have a problem with that.
Some states want to pull that statutory thing. Well, there's too much of an age difference between you two, which that's a sophisticated concept when you think about it.
Yeah, it's you
Because
have
the
to take it
people back
like
in the 17 and 1800s that are making these rules aren't thinking along those lines.
well, no, they wouldn't because
they were going, well, wait a minute, he's 35. He should have been long married at 35.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's why that wasn't there in the law.
Well, and back in the day, it wasn't that weird for, say, a 28-year-old man to marry a 12 or 13-year-old girl. Like, no one thought that was strange.
That's because that's a 28-year-old. It took 28 years to get the wealth you needed to marry anybody.
And they figured, hey,
And then
she
the
only
only-
just had her period, so now she can have as many babies as
Well, the
humanly
only
possible.
unmarried women that were available for a 28-year-old would have been pretty young.
Yeah, because all the older ones would have
Because all the
been
years
married
they were all long married.
Yeah.
So it's all just depends on.
Like I said, it's messed
the
up,
evolution of
but
society.
you can see how it happened back then. But there's no excuse for it nowadays, obviously.
No,
because
it's a different situation.
Yeah, it's because society is not the same, and like I said, wasn't cool back then. But you can understand how it happened.
They
It
didn't
was
know.
just a
They
different-
didn't know.
They didn't know any better.
They didn't know what cool was back then.
No, they didn't.
The situation was very different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I don't think there was very few cool motherfuckers, I think, back then.
Yeah,
by
it's like
today's
every
standards.
now and then I'll read something from like back in like the 17th or 18th century, and I'll be like, "Wow, that sounds like really modern," but it's very, very rare.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times I'll read something back then, I'm like, "What the fuck are they talking?"
Yeah. What are they talking about? What are they talking about?
Like, oh, that's okay.
There's a Pookie.
Oh my goodness, she just
Hey.
came in. She
Yeah.
must have come in all by herself.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So let's go back to 1772. So now this other incident that got him into hot water. So he had a manservant, as you mentioned, named Latour. Now
Yeah,
he
this
tells
guy
they go
here,
to
yeah.
Marseille,
Yeah.
and he says to Latour, "Go out and find me some prostitutes. I
Right.
like them, quote unquote, very young." And he's talking like 12, 13 years old, like just tweens. That's
Yeah,
what-
but back in those days, they were walking around selling it.
I
a lot of
guess
times,
so.
people didn't live as long, and
So he
It was real
gets
fast.
so Latour rounds up 4 prostitutes and brings them back to this chateau that they're staying at. Now, one thing that Marquis de Sade had, he had this like really fancy like crystal box, and it had these really, really nice like high-end chocolates in there. Now, at this particular session, let's call it that, sources differ over whether the Marquis gave the chocolates to the prostitutes or whether they just kind of helped themselves to the chocolate because they were like, hey, chocolate, free chocolate. And it was just in the box and they ate it. Now, the problem being that unbeknownst to them, the chocolates had been soaked in Spanish fly, which, if you've seen any 80s sex comedies,
I
was
remember that
like,
shit, yeah.
it was kind of like touted as like an aphrodisiac, which
no.
I guess you could call it that, but the reason that it was used as an aphrodisiac, one, if you eat it, it will make you violently sick and may put you in a coma and maybe die. But I think the reason that it was touted as an aphrodisiac was because one of the side effects of what the chemical does is that it makes it swells your urethra. So in women, it doesn't like get you hot or anything. It just like, ow, I'm in horrible pain, I'm vomiting, and it hurts to pee.
That's not
But
something you would
in men, it gives you a horrible, like an erection, but a really painful erection that may not go away without medical intervention.
Damn.
So what ended up happening here was that these poor women like ate these chocolates not knowing that they had Spanish fly in them, and 2 of them got violently ill. Vomiting and everything like that. And they thought that they had been poisoned, which they kind of had.
What is it? It's an herb?
It's kind of like, I can't remember the name of the chemical, but it comes from like, it is the same chemical that they call it Spanish fly because it does actually come from like an insect that's called like a Spanish fly. But it's mixed with something else, and I can't remember what it is offhand. But it's this particular chemical that causes the reaction.
But it's not an aphrodisiac. They just thought it was.
Not in that sense.
Yeah.
It's considered that, like I said, it got that reputation because it swells your urethra. That's why. But not in a fun way.
Yeah. So what made them think that would turn a motherfucker on? I can't understand.
I don't know. But so, yeah, so
That was
at
some weird
least 2 of the women like that ate the chocolates got violently ill and were afraid they had been poisoned. Now, they actually went and reported the shit to the police. They also reported that Marquis de Sade had engaged in sodomy with his manservant Latour. Like I said, he didn't really care about man, woman, child, anything. He would just like fuck anything that moved.
Yeah. He'd have his manservant just fucking take him up in the booty in a fucking heartbeat too.
Yeah, both ways. Like top, bottom. He didn't care. Like I said, he was just like any...
It was all good to him.
It was a sexual buffet, and he was like at an all-you-can-eat sexual buffet, pretty much. Yeah. He didn't care if it was given, received.
It was a fucking trip, and not necessarily in a good way either. You know what I mean? I'm not down with it.
That's what I mean. Like I said, it's like, it bothers me so much because it sounds like you're being like sex negative and stuff like that, which I'm not. Because like I said, if anything you want to get up to in the privacy of your own home with other consenting adults, you just knock yourself out.
There's too much fucking against consent.
That's what I mean. It's just so much of the shit hinged upon them kidnapping people or paying people and then, you know.
It just reminds me too much of fucking Albert Fish.
Yeah.
You know, that's all I'm going to say.
So these two, Marquis de Sade and Latour get... they don't get arrested because they fucking ran off to Italy because they knew they were going to get in trouble. The authorities sentenced them to death in absentia.
Damn!
And burned them in effigy.
Jesus
Which
Christ.
I thought, it seems like a waste of time. It's like they're not even here, but we're mad and we have to do something about it.
They got sentenced to death, though, man. I'd run.
They did. Well, they did. They went to Italy.
Yeah.
Now, another thing that did not endear the Marquis de Sade to his mother-in-law was the fact that he took his wife's younger sister. When him and Latour took off to Italy, he took her with them. Damn. And so, the mother-in-law was again not very happy about that either.
Wonder what she thought of all this. Maybe she.
I don't know. Like I said,
she thought this shit was exciting.
She was very young, so I'm not really sure if she even knew that she could do anything. Because it's weird because I feel like
he probably used his magic on her.
He's
talking to her and fucking getting.
Yeah, he might have. I mean, like I said, she was very young, so he might have been like all like sweet talking her and shit. And she was like, "Oh, he loves me," and all this other kind of shit.
And
like,
then
you know what I mean?
Like some shit where he's twisting it around about, you know what I mean? Like you gotta understand, we're upending society. This is important.
Yeah, he probably gave her some fucking line
he's
like
that.
We're don't listen to that bullshit, ladies.
We're going where no man has
any young girls out there, don't listen to any bullshit that like they give you.
I'm sure he was telling all kinds of bullshit.
Don't listen to any bullshit
about we're going where no man has gone before. We're changing the world. You know, this is some shit like that.
He does seem like he thought that.
Yeah, delusions.
He was like an edgelord before there was edgelords.
He's an edgelord.
God damn it. I fucking hate edgelords. So they run off to Italy. They got caught like on the way and like imprisoned at a fortress for a little while, but they escaped because apparently the security was not very lax. So they was very lax. Yeah. Well, he did that a couple of times.
Well, they probably thought, well, they're noblemen. They won't escape. They're honorable.
They have honor. Yeah.
Yeah, they have honor.
And then they're just like, hee, bye.
You stand out here. Yeah. Stay right here in this courtyard. We'll call you back into prison in
don't you go
a few
anywhere.
hours. Don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
That's it.
So he ends up coming back to France and going to his family chateau at Lacoste.
The Chateau de Lacoste.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is still there, although it's a ruin nowadays. But
that's
it's
probably
like
what it was called, wasn't it, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I figured it.
Lacoste,
is that called
the chateau,
Chateau de Lacoste?
Well, I just said that. That's why you called it.
I called it.
You just repeated what I said.
Yeah, well, whatever.
You don't realize because your light just wasted. Yeah. So he goes back to Lacoste, and his wife is still there. His fucking wife, I don't know, man. There must have been something wrong with her, too. She would, like, put up with a bunch of shit. I don't know if she was into it, too, or she just thought she couldn't do anything about it, or what. I don't know what her deal was.
Marquis must have had a big old dick to get away with some shit like this.
I don't know if he did or not. It's like, did anybody even say?
What the fuck? I mean, you would think that
even if he did have a big dick, it's like,
you must think that a motherfucker must have a fucking 10-inch fucking dick to get away with this shit.
God, I don't know, man.
I can't understand it.
Even a 10-inch dick, that doesn't...
Wouldn't be enough?
No.
13 would be enough, though, right?
No.
Okay. I'm just fucking with you.
Over a certain size, it just becomes...
Yeah, then it becomes a pain in the ass.
Yeah, it just becomes an impediment. But yeah, so he goes back to Lacoste, and his wife is still there. And apparently at this point, his wife starts either joining in the festivities or was at least okay with it because she didn't report anything.
I kind of got a feeling that they join in with this.
Maybe
shit.
she was
I
like
think so.
in on it.
Well,
It's
you would
weird
think that
because
you could probably back in those days kind of fucking finesse a woman into this shit.
well, and I was just going to say that earlier is that back in those days, I feel like a lot of women, particularly married women, I don't know if they even had like the concept that you could be like, nah, I don't like that.
Right,
like, don't
maybe.
do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Maybe they didn't have that kind
You'd
of.
have
They
to-
just like, well, they just do. That's what they
it
do,
is.
and
Yeah.
you just have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Which
I would be interested to get into my fucking time machine.
I would be too, because I'd like to see how
Yeah.
much of that
Get
shit.
into my fucking DeLorean and go back in time.
Because
and
I
fucking
kind of
see
feel.
the way these people were.
Because I kind of feel like, yeah, culture makes a big difference, but in a way, too, it's like human nature being what it is. And since women have always been just as stubborn and just as, just like men are, so I always kind of feel like there had to be some resentment.
That cat is tearing shit up.
She's
Stop
like,
it!
She's behind my chair, like
Tearing up the chair.
she likes to like claw like under the chair,
Yeah.
and she goes all the way around like a merry-go-round. It's very funny.
She lays on her back
And she
then
drags
all
herself
4
all-
feet tearing shit up. She's hilarious.
Yeah, she's funny. I don't know what she's doing. She's making all kind of
She's
noise
gone.
back there. But yeah, so I kind of wonder how much resentment there was with women of the time period that were just like, you just had to like put up with all this bullshit that the dudes were doing. You know what I mean? It's
I
like,
don't know, you
what
might be
could they
overestimating.
do anything about it?
Probably.
Did they have any recourse?
Probably.
I don't know.
Women always have a way of getting even with you. I think a lot
True,
of the
we are
shit-
very devious.
Yeah, I think a lot of shit is
Not devious. I think
I think women had a lot more power than
well, we're a lot
people
sneakier
think.
than men
Hey,
are.
you stop it. Don't
Yeah.
do it. This cat's fucking crazy. Come here. That's right. You better run. You better run
She's
from
like-
daddy.
Yeah, she's
Okay.
like, oh
Yeah.
no.
Women are a lot more. I think throughout history we're a lot more powerful. Than
We're a
people
lot
believe.
sneakier,
They're
and
devious motherfuckers, and,
and
they know
we
how,
can do, and we're like in a
they
lot of
know
ways
how to
we're a lot
manipulate.
smarter.
Gossipy, manipulating bitches will fucking get you.
True.
That's
We
what it
have
is. They're
other. We
playing
have
those goddamn
other.
games.
We have other avenues to
And I
which
really-
you would have to because
Yeah.
if you are generally not as physically strong or large,
You have to play another
you
game.
have to do something else.
Look, man, I'm going to tell you something straight up. When you read the oldest of human history, you start going back into the Old Testament and all this stuff is really designed to kind of negate women's power. You know what I mean? It's paternalistic.
I always thought that it was because
and it must have been a backlash. It must have been that women ran the show.
they were afraid of us.
Yeah, I think women ran the show in prehistory. And that
I think
there was like a revolt.
that's what I mean. I think it
And-
all comes down to
and
like
that-
all of the laws that have been made throughout history to take away women's autonomy or take away women's power and stuff like that
It's
is because
because
men,
of what happened in the
it's
past.
because I think it's because
think-
of fear. It's because of
I don't
either
think I don't think it's
they're
just-
afraid of what women have done or what they can do.
Right. I think it's what they have done. That's what I think.
You know
I
what I
kind
mean?
of think that in prehistory, they were maternalistic societies. That's what I think. Or you know what I'm talking about? Where matriarchal.
Yeah.
I think that was actually the beginning of it. A lot of the old shit was actually goddesses, big fat goddesses, big old titties.
Yeah.
I think there was. I think
Which makes more sense to
It
me
makes a
because
lot more sense. I think it was
because women
female
are the ones
that create people.
create other people.
And I think it sometime in prehistory, women were actually worshipped as some kind of goddesses,
Man,
and
we
that
should bring
they-
those days back
and that they
again.
ran the
That'd be nice.
show. And that I kind of think that men revolted from that. Be on the show,
Hey, Pookie.
okay?
You being a bad girl?
Yeah, she's being bad.
Yeah, she is.
She tore up all.
There's
all
like I
kinds
have
of-
like Christmas and Valentine's Day of
She
like
tore
wrapping
the
paper over
shit
there,
out of
and
it.
she just like that's her favorite thing. She loves paper.
Yeah.
So yeah, so he goes back to Lacoste. His wife is there, and she's apparently like either down with it or like la la la, looking the other way. So during this time period, Marquis de Sade, he has like a whole bunch of quote unquote employees at this chateau, many of whom are young teenage girls or boys. And Most of them ended up complaining that they had like raped or molested them at some point and ended up like fleeing the fucking place in terror. So during this, so he gets a reputation again, ends up having to flee to Italy again. 1776, he comes back to Lacoste, hires a bunch of servant girls. They also took off, terrified, because he couldn't keep his fucking hands off them, apparently. And in 1777, one of the girls that he had employed that had taken off, that girl's dad came to the house and shot the Marquis in the face, or tried to, but the gun misfired.
Ooh.
So
he
escaped death.
Yeah.
So, like I said, this is not a popular motherfucker. People are coming to his house, trying to, like, shoot him in the face because of all the shit that he's doing to their children. So, you know.
I don't blame him.
I don't either, I have to tell you. So, later that same year, which was 1776, the Marquis de Sade gets tricked into coming back to Paris because Lacoste, his house, was kind of like out in the boondocks. Not nowadays, but back in the old days when he was alive, it was kind of out in the middle of nowhere. So in some ways it was kind of like a thing where he, you know, it was so remote that he could like get away with a lot of shit out there because it was kind of like, it was out like outside the city. So he gets tricked into going back to Paris. And I think maybe his mother-in-law might have been behind some of this shit. They told him, it's like, hey, your mom is like really sick. You need to come see her. So the Marquis de Sade did that. What he did not know was that his mother was already dead.
Damn.
So he comes back to, in a way, I kind of hope that his mother-in-law did that because that's really mean and I love that. But it's like, come on, fucker. Yeah, your poor mom's sick. Fuck you. She's already dead. So yeah, so he gets back to Paris. And then he already had like a death sentence hanging over his head from before, remember? Because they had like burned him in absentia. Yeah. So he still had that outstanding charge. So he gets to Paris and they arrest him and they imprison him in the Chateau de Vincennes, I guess is how you pronounce it. Now he did appeal the death sentence in 1778. So he got that overturned. But since he still had that, the king's like letter de cachet, like the thing that said, hey, you're going to jail no matter, you don't get a trial or anything. So they still like pulled that out their ass and said, okay, well, then they just threw him in prison. So he escaped from there again, but they recaptured him again. He, while he was in prison, he also like made friends with this other guy who was Count de Mirabeau, who was also like into like writing pornography and was into all that kind of shit. So they kind of like hung out for a little while, but then they ended up like hating each other the way some people who are like really similar, I guess they kind of do sometimes.
Maybe it got into the like fucking the consensual action. It's like you're doing it against people's fucking
Maybe
ability.
that's what, I don't know what they were arguing about, but for some reason they ended up like hating each other like lifelong enemies. So this particular prison that he was in ended up closing in 1784. So then he gets transferred to the Bastille. Now, while he's in the Bastille, you know, he was like really bored and he was really, really whiny about having to be, you know, imprisoned because, it was such a big inconvenience and everything because of his revolutionary ideas and blah, blah, blah. He was like one of those type of dudes. He was always like complaining about that kind of shit. So he, as an outlet for his frustration, he started writing. Now, very famously, in the Bastille in 1784, he wrote the manuscript for what would become probably one of his most famous books, The 120 Days of Sodom. So also very famously, The 120 Days of Sodom was written because they would not give him any paper or pens because they, you know, knew what kind of shit he was up to. So he would just find like kind of scraps of paper and he wrote the whole book, which, as I said, was never really finished. It was just kind of like, you know, the introduction of the first part were finished and the rest of it was just like really detailed notes. He wrote it on like little bits of paper, which he taped together. And then like he kind of rolled up on like this cotton spool, like a toilet paper. And then he would like stuff it in this little hidey hole in the wall. Now, when they ended up finding this shit, it was like, and you can still see the fucking, the original manuscript for it is 39 feet long. And it's just on this little fucking, like a toilet paper spool. And the writing is so small that to read it, you need a magnifying glass.
I wonder how he wrote it.
That's what I mean. It's like, I don't know how fucking, So he wrote this shit. Now, he was working on this and he didn't finish it. He had all the notes and everything. Now, on the 4th of July, 1789, he got transferred to an insane asylum at Charenton. Now, he had been... One of the reasons why he got transferred to an insane asylum from the Bastille was because this was, of course, like right before the outbreak of the worst outbreak of the French Revolution. And so he had been like, there was all these mobs like rioting and shit like that, like outside the Bastille. And he had made this like little kind of like handmade like little megaphone. And he was like inciting like all the rioters outside. He's like, hey, they're killing us in here. They're slitting our throats. Storm the Bastille. Storm the Bastille. So he was like yelling at them out the window. So they apparently took him. He was like naked and everything. And they transferred him to Charenton, which was an insane asylum. Now... This was 10 days before mobs actually did storm the Bastille. Now, since his manuscript for 120 Days of Sodom was, he thought, still in the wall of his cell, he thought that when the Bastille got stormed by the mobs of, angry people, that it was lost forever. And he was really, really sad about it because he'd put like a lot of work into this.
And she was probably still there in the wall, wasn't it?
No, what ended up happening? This is so weird. This is like one of history's mysteries, okay? 2 days before the Bastille was stormed, for some reason, I'm not really sure why, this rando dude, and all they know about him is his name. His name was Arnaud de Saint-Maximin. And he, for some reason, went into the Marquis' cell and found the manuscript and took it. So he saved it. But the Marquis didn't know that. So he died thinking that manuscript had been destroyed in the storming of the Bastille. For whatever reason, and they don't know why the guy took it. They don't know how the guy knew it was in there. They don't know anything about this dude other than his name.
What did he do with it?
He later took it and he like sold it to various like collectors and, it ended up getting published later on, but not until like, it wasn't widely published until the early 20th century, actually.
So he made a buck off of it. Yeah.
Not much, though, because it was only during the 19th century, his writings were not really all that known and really only like some underground. It was kind of like, some of your Enlightenment writers and like, writers like Flaubert and stuff like that, like Gustave Flaubert, like they knew about it. So it was kind of like on the DL. Like it was kind of like what the cool kids knew about. They were kind of like
scene writings.
Yeah, it was like it was just like real small press shit because they knew that if they published it, like if a real publishing house published, you'd get in fucking trouble. Like you'd get arrested. You couldn't publish it.
They couldn't even fucking make Nevermind the Bollocks, the fucking Sex Pistols album, without getting in trouble.
Yeah, which is crazy. And if you've read this shit, this is like a million times worse. Yeah. It's a million times worse. So it's just like weird why this guy like took it. But like I said, he did like. He passed it to like collectors and booksellers and stuff like that who later on did like small press and they kind of circulated it among, various like circles of like free thinkers and things like that. But it didn't really get any wide circulation until the early 20th century. So later on, like after kind of the French Revolution starts taking hold, they actually abolished the whole like king's hidden letter thing, like where people could just be arrested and detained without any trial. They got rid of that. His wife ended up divorcing him around this time. Now, weirdly, so he had published a bunch of his books, like, anonymously. Like, he wouldn't even put his name on them or anything. So, this is around 1790. Now, he's, kind of, like, free at this point for a little while, like, because he kind of got out of the insane asylum for a bit. So, during the time that he was free, briefly, he met this actress who had formerly been an actress. Her name was Marie Constance. She already had a 6-year-old son. She was a widow, I believe. And him and her were kind of like together until the end, although he was still like fucking around because it was the Marquis de Sade. You know who you're talking about.
Couldn't keep his shit in his pants.
Now, the weird thing was that even though he was an aristocrat, and obviously, when the French Revolution happened and the new kind of regime came in, they did not look too kindly on the aristocracy and, in fact, cut a bunch of their heads off, as most people will know. However, the Marquis de Sade was able to kind of like wangle his way into their midst by saying, hey, the aristocracy fucked me over too because I'm a free thinker and they wouldn't let me publish all my stuff and I've been in jail and I was in trouble and everything like that. And they kind of bought that. So, and he even like did the whole thing where he like changed his name to like Citizen Sade and all this other kind of stuff. So it's like he kind of endeared himself to them a little bit, and they even like gave him some kind of higher up positions and shit like that.
He's just playing fucking games.
Which, yeah, I think he was just trying to save his own ass.
He was using his nobility to get ass.
Yeah, that's
and
essentially
to fuck
what he
ass
was doing.
over.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
He's just fucking, he's full of shit.
Yeah.
I understand it, though.
So...
He's just trying to do what he can do.
That's what I mean. He was just trying to save his own butt. He didn't
right.
care about any cause or anything like that.
No.
So, now apparently he goes back to his, like, chateau in Lacoste, but as with many aristocratic, like, properties at the time, the revolutionaries had looted them or destroyed them or whatever, so it had kind of been, like, destroyed. And like I said, it still stands today, but it's essentially a ruin. So he goes and moves back to Paris. Now in 1790, he gets elected to the National Convention, and he actually wrote like a whole bunch of like political pamphlets and stuff, and he advocated like for some, shit that the revolutionaries were trying to get, like a direct vote and, various other things. But a lot of the revolutionaries still like kind of looked askance at him because, he was still essentially an aristocrat. Also, his son actually was in the military and he deserted. And so he had to kind of distance himself from that because it was kind of like, right. So that was kind of like a
looked
thing.
Like he was not a patriot.
Right. So it kind of looked like that. So there was kind of a lot of shit going on there. Now, he also kind of got in trouble like during the Reign of Terror in 1793. He wrote a eulogy for Jean-Paul Marat in which he was kind of like very laudatory toward him, which a lot of people looked askance at. He also was critical of Robespierre, who had taken over at the time, so he kind of got in trouble for that.
Yeah, but okay, for any of the American audience, you got to understand that the French Revolution was very different from the American Revolution. If you were to look at the French Revolution and the Jacobins were fucking assholes too. The Jacobins were fucking communists, basically. They'd kill you in a fucking heartbeat.
Well, there were no good guys in that situation, really.
You couldn't fucking
Some of the ideas were good, but in practice, it didn't work out so good.
No, your ass would be at the guillotine before you fucking knew it. The French Revolution was not really a good thing. Not at all. Not
at the time, no. Like I said, yes, the ideals behind it were good.
Yeah,
but
in
practice, it didn't.
Terrorism. And
in practice, it didn't turn out.
Yeah, and then the only thing that ended it would have been fucking Napoleon Bonaparte, who was.
Although it should be said that after Napoleon came out, he didn't like the Marquis either.
No, I wouldn't. No, fucking no. Napoleon. In American terminology, you could say Napoleon was a Republican. A secular Republican who thought he was God. It was a weird fucking thing. I'm not sure there's an American analogy. Although,
what, you don't think any politicians don't think they're God? Come on now.
No, well, I think I'd rather fucking have Napoleon as a commander than Robespierre. Robespierre couldn't be trusted.
He was kind of like I said, everyone's terrible in this situation.
Yeah.
It's one of those situations where
at the drop of a hat, Robespierre would put you underneath the guillotine. At least Napoleon had an understandable ego.
Yeah,
you could predict him.
You know what's crazy about this shit though? It's that when the Marquis de Sade was still in good graces, like with the revolutionaries.
Yeah.
He was actually his father and mother-in-law, the mother-in-law who hated him so much. They were actually in line to go to the guillotine, and he stepped in on their behalf and saved their asses.
That's something else.
That's
almost out of character from what I'm thinking.
I think he did it just so he'd have something to hold over them.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, it seems magnanimous.
Yeah.
But I don't think he did it for those reasons.
Either that or maybe fucking the Marquis was just like, these motherfuckers are crazy.
I mean, he was a complicated individual, but I do feel like his overriding philosophy was self-preservation. So I do feel like, and they were the ones with the money.
Yeah.
I mean, he did ask them for money, even though they hated him and were trying to like destroy him at every turn. But he did save them from the guillotine. But like I said, I don't think he did it out of any like humanistic.
It's hard to say.
I don't think he did.
It's
I mean,
just-
it would be out of character if he did it just because he was a nice guy.
No, I'm
Because
just
I don't
gonna-
think he was.
I'm just going to say to the audience, based upon everything that I fucking read, you could not trust Jacobins. They would fucking turn on you. They would turn on you and they'd fucking send you to the guillotine. Didn't matter what you believed in. It was more like trial by gossip. At any one moment, they could say, you're a fucking enemy of the revolution, and fucking cut your head off over the slightest things. At least Napoleon was a fucking predictable autocrat, I guess you could call him.
Yeah.
He was a predictable emperor. Out of the two, I'd probably take. I'd definitely take Napoleon. And
Well, like I
he wasn't.
said-
And he wasn't short either. That's a. So he was,
He was average height.
He was average height. Oh, actually, a little bit above average height. That was British propaganda that said he was short. He was. Napoleon was trying to save the situation, although he was also a mortal man. You know what I mean? He had weaknesses.
Well, like I
And
said, there's no good guys.
There's
in
no
this
good guys
situation.
in
There's
any
no
of
good
his.
guys in this situation.
No, not in that situation. There aren't very many good guys in history.
That's because good guys you don't hear about.
You don't hear about them. Fucking.
You don't hear about good guys.
Pretty much
Not usually.
all great men, if you were to kind of quantify them on a moral level, all great men are kind of bad. If you're not bad, you're never going to be great.
Well, no one's going to remember.
No one's going to remember.
It's not
you.
so much great as in, oh, they're
Yeah.
so awesome. It's just
Yeah.
no one's going to remember.
It's more about who's strong and who's weak more than anything else. Although there are some strong motherfuckers that I liked. You know what I mean? There were some deadly motherfuckers that I liked. I mean, there's something about Genghis Khan that kind of fucking.
Well, I
can
think
kinda
that
understand
people,
about
even
that.
though people don't condone some of these people's actions, there's a reason. I mean, people
There
are
was a
just
time
fascinated.
and a place for everything. And
It's why
so-
people are fascinated by serial killers. It's why
Yeah.
people still remember Vlad the Impaler or, fucking Countess Bathory or,
Even
people have
adolescent-
done shows about because people are just fascinated by that kind of stuff. And I think in a way it's good to be fascinated by that kind of stuff because the fact that we're fascinated by it means that it's not all that common
Yeah.
in some ways, which is good because we don't need a whole bunch of Vlad the Impalers.
If I were to pick one of them out of history, though, if I were to pick one man out of history, that I would say, man, I would respect that motherfucker. That would have to be Julius.
Yeah.
I just fucking liked Julius. Julius was a man of his time. He understood the fucking beauty of a shorn body. The motherfucker liked a hairless body. He was a military man who had style. You know what I mean? And he crossed that Rubicon. The die was cast. He made the move that he had to make. But unfortunately, fucking people of the Roman Republic could not handle his greatness. Sometimes a motherfucker's too much of a man for other men.
I guess
What
so.
they did to him. What
Yeah.
they did to Julius. They paid, though. They paid for what they did to him.
Yeah.
Augustus, fucking his heir, took vengeance and became the fucking first emperor of Rome. And, that's a thing that fucking Westerners, it's a time in which Westerners should all fucking study. Because that drama's playing out even today in the Western world. I'm going to leave it at that. But I read Julius, and fucking as a fellow military man, I understand his predilections. I can appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where was I? All right.
Didn't mean to distract you, Jenny.
You're kind of
I was man crushing on an ancient man.
Yeah, I guess
Just a
so.
minute ago, yeah.
So as I said, because Marquis de Sade was critical of Robespierre, he actually got fired from all his posts, and he got thrown into prison again for a year. He was let out in 1794 after the Reign of Terror had ended. Now, in 1796, at this point, he's pretty much broke ass. He sold his castle, or his chateau in Lacoste, which, you know, was a ruin, but he was able to get a couple bucks for it, I guess. But he didn't really have all that much money. He ended up, like, living in the back of a barn or some shit like that. So, 1801, after Napoleon has come to power, after the Reign of Terror. Now, I feel like the Marquis was kind of thinking, oh, well, now it's a new regime and I'll just, like, you know, suck up to that one as well, just like he usually did. However, Napoleon pretty much didn't want any of the Marquis' shit. He was just kind of like, the two books that had come out, Justine and Juliet, which had been published anonymously. He basically said, whoever wrote those books, I want that bitch arrested. So what they did was the officials
That means he read them.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people read them.
Yeah, okay.
So basically, they had the officials
Justine.
kind of like,
Yeah,
they
that
had,
bitch was kinky.
yeah, a lot
That
of the
was
shit
kinky,
was.
yes, like,
Well, yeah. So they had somebody like stake out the publishing house, waiting for someone to show up.
What, to collect the bill?
with
Yeah.
you know, some shit that would like prove that they had written it. Unfortunately for the Marquis, he did actually show up at the publishing house, and he got arrested. So he gets sent to this one prison, and so while he's at this one prison, he gets accused of seducing other prisoners there, because like I said, who are we talking about here? You can't take him anywhere, obviously. So then he gets transferred to another prison, like a much worse one. Now, his family at this stage, they kind of intervene, and they're kind of like, hey, why don't you... Because the prison that he was transferred to was apparently really bad, like really violent. So they said, well, why don't you send him to a nice insane asylum? Right. So they ended up sending him back to Charenton in 1803. Now, his, by this point, ex-wife, because she had obtained a divorce, and his children, he had 3 of them, and they were grown by this point, they said that they would pay for him to stay there. Now, even though this was an insane asylum, it didn't seem like he was suffering too much. I mean, they let, like, his mistress... Apparently, the Marquis told the, the insane asylum officials or whatever that his mistress was a relative. So they let her live, like, in the room next to his. So he had access to his mistress all the time. They also let him have all of his 600 books. They let him have... paper and pens and whatever else he wanted. And in fact, the abbot that ran the place was kind of progressive in his views. He was kind of like an early advocate, and he got a lot of flack for this, but he was an early advocate for patients in insane asylums having like creative outlets. So he kind of encouraged the Marquis to write. He also, like some of the Marquis' plays that he wrote, he would let the Marquis, like, put the plays on in the insane asylum with the other patients, like, as actors. And, like, they would, like people would come and see them.
Well, it sounds like the Marquis made a fan, if you
I
ask
guess
me.
so.
If you ask me, yeah. He probably, back before, VHS and DVD and Blu-ray, you might want to fucking see a play. And if you were a religious minor religious figure, you might want to watch basically like watching a movie. From the Marquis.
They didn't have movies back then.
They didn't have movies, but you put on a play. You want to see that. I can understand it.
Yeah,
because it would be kind of like it would be kind of like a delicacy, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
it would be something that was kind of fucking only certain people could see.
And that might have been some crazy shit, like, hey, let's go to the insane asylum and
watch
see
exactly
this play with
by
these
the
quote-unquote crazy people that the Marquis de Sade wrote that all these quote-unquote crazy people are acting in.
That's what I was thinking.
I think probably most of the people in the asylum were not crazy, because back in the day, they would just throw anybody in an asylum for anything. So I imagine, like, maybe some of them had some mental problems, maybe some.
A lot of them were just odd. Haven't you bet a lot of them were just odd.
Or just had like inconvenient political views, or
basically what they're talking about is an art house film.
That's essentially what this was.
Yeah.
So for a while, he kind of had like free reign of the place. He was even like humping like the other people that like worked there, and like there's no one stopped him. You know what I mean? So he was just kind of like living the high life. Now, in 1809, like apparently like a new police regime came in, and they were like, oh no, we can't have that. So they stopped all that. They said no more theater productions, no more paper and pens for him. It's like this is supposed to be punishment. So they took all his shit away. Now, also during this time, he started another relationship. Like, it wasn't enough that he had, like, the mistress living in the room next door in the insane asylum, but he also started banging a 14-year-old girl named Madeline Leclerc, who was the daughter of someone that worked at the insane asylum.
He had some pull. You must have some pull to get
Look at all of the shit. I mean, yes, he spent a lot of his years in prison or an insane asylum, but look at all the shit he got away with.
How old was he at this time? We're talking about in 30s?
No, this is when he's old. He's
old?
Like, he's like 69 or 70 at this point.
He's 70. He's banging a 14-year-old.
Yes.
From the insane asylum. It's the girl that. Man, this motherfucker.
I think he was 70. Yeah.
He's got away with himself, huh?
And you have to
must
think
be able to
too
fucking-
that, as you mentioned, like near the beginning of the show, by the time that he was this age and he was in the insane asylum,
He was ugly by this time. Yeah.
He was real fat.
Yeah.
He was real fat, also.
That's some weird shit.
Nothing
man.
like Jeffrey Rush in Quills. He wasn't sexy at all.
And,
The woman he was banging didn't look anything like Kate Winslet. It wasn't like that.
he must have had a way with words.
I
That's
guess.
all I'm thinking of. He
I
could
can't-
talk his way into some shit. Must have been.
I can't think of anything that a motherfucker could say that would convince me to do it. I seriously can't. But you know what I mean? If you're 14, okay.
I can't comprehend it. I can't
This is
comprehend
what, if I was 14 and like some weird 70-year-old man, it's
Who's
like
in an
everybody'd be like,
insane asylum?
no.
He's in an insane asylum at 70.
I would leave like skid
looking
marks
like a
running
fat ass
away.
Benjamin Franklin.
Yeah.
And he's got a fucking long
Oh, I
ass
want to be
criminal
all
his-
about. Yeah, no,
And
thank
he's
you.
got a long ass criminal history, and he's gonna talk his way up into
He must have been roofing some people.
Some 14-year-old trim.
I mean, I guess there wasn't a lot of like options back then, but still, everyone was
They just
stinky
didn't
and
know,
gross. But still,
no, I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
Still, I don't know. I don't know.
Maybe that's not true.
No, it is. It's
is
just
true?
I don't know. Like I said, I don't know how consensual it was. It's not like he had a problem with.
I think it must have been consensual.
She was 14 though. Come on.
But he's 70.
yeah.
How is he going to force this into reality? He must.
He
have
could
talked
sit on her. He was fat.
He talked her into it somehow.
Maybe he just sat on
From
her
his
head.
insane asylum.
He sat on her head with his shit volcano until she submitted.
His shit.
I'm just blue skying. I don't really know.
He made shit volcanoes up. That's not a possibility. The volcano itself would snap off.
You would think
It
that
would
after
snap
a while.
off. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and honestly, if you were that old, because the woman in the book, like I said, it's a fictional novel, obviously. But the woman in the book that supposedly had the shit volcano, I think she was 56 or 60, or she was supposed to
Never
be.
once wiped her
And
ass.
and it never once wiped her ass. I'm like,
is a
your
fucking
shit would like fester and you would die by then.
This is a marquee
Come
fantasy. It's kind of like that girl that we heard of that her
shit
mom
volcano.
locked her up for running off, left her in there forever. Remember that? And she was in the shit incrustation.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah, kind of.
What was the name of that fucking case?
I don't know.
Yeah, you guys know what I'm talking about. She was found laying on her side, encrusted in like a shit, a dried up shit. What do you call it? Grand Canyon on either side of her, like a canyon.
Yeah.
And what else was in there? There was oyster shells. This was back in the 1800s. And then they arrested the mom for locking her up. Remember that? And then the mom died in prison, in jail. You don't remember that case?
Not really. I just kept thinking of that one that the girl next door was based on. But that did not involve shit.
There was a case where a young girl was getting ready to run off with some dude. The mom got pissed off, so she took the girl and locked her up in a dark room by herself for her whole life. most of her adult life, and then the mom grew. The mom ended up being in her like mid-70s, and then the police got a message that that an old lady was keeping her daughter imprisoned inside the house, and then they went and they broke in, they found her, and then they locked the mama up. And, yeah, there's pictures of her. That was in the early 1900s, actually.
Yeah. Well, I'd have to look it up. I don't
Yeah,
really
we might want to do a show on that. That was some weird shit there.
So he starts banging this 14-year-old girl. This lasts for 4 years. Now, he actually ended up dying in 1814. Now, as I said, the movie Quills kind of showed him getting tortured to death or anything. Like, they were trying to make him a martyr, which is a little bit fucked up. Like I said, I like that movie, but it's really historically inaccurate. He actually ended up dying very peacefully in his sleep at the age of 74. Now, he had said in his will specifically that he did not want his body opened for any, so he didn't want an autopsy or anything like that. He's like, I want you to leave my body in the cell for 48 hours and don't touch it. And then come in and it's like bury it out on my property. And he wanted, I can't remember the exact quote, but he wanted like acorns and trees, and like he wanted everything to grow over his grave so no one would know where it was, so everyone would forget him. Like he wanted that.
He didn't want to be dug up and fucking desecrated.
We'll see how that worked out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, but what ended up happening was that someone, particularly probably out of spite, I would think, actually gave him a Christian burial with a cross and everything, which he would have hated. Yeah. So, and after he died, like I said, his son, who probably hated his guts, burned most of his manuscripts and everything like that. Now, like I said, a lot of the shit that he wrote, he did write a lot of stuff, but a lot of it wasn't published until later, and some of it was like actually lost or destroyed. So, but what ended up happening is that he gets buried, and like not that long afterward, phrenologists that thought that all of your personality traits could be seen by like the shape of your head. So one of those guys was like, I need to get my hands on that fucking skull.
Yeah, we gotta see that.
So he goes and like raids the grave and takes his skull. Now, he makes a cast, or he loaned the skull to another phrenologist, and the other phrenologist made off with it. Now, apparently this phrenologist made a cast of it, and then for a long time, they didn't know where the actual skull was. Like, it kind of bounced around, like, to different museums and stuff. I think they found it at this point. I think it's in the the Museum of Man in Paris. So I think they have his actual skull now. But it's funny that that he specifically did not want a Christian burial, because, like I said, he was very adamantly an atheist, and he just hated all religion. And he did not want anybody touching his body or autopsying it. And those two things happened. Because people were just like, fuck you, man. We're just going to do whatever. So now interesting...
for real, fuck him.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. Well, the interesting thing, though, was that, as I mentioned earlier, because a lot of his stuff was published anonymously when he was alive, during the 19th century, his shit wasn't widely available. Like, his works weren't widely available. Now, there were, like, a kind of an elite, like, your intellectual, your writers, like, a lot of Enlightenment thinkers and stuff like that. Like I said, like Flaubert, like Charles Baudelaire, like, people like that. If you were kind of, like, in the know or in that scene, the manuscripts kind of got passed around. And so I feel like, in that way, he sort of became a figure of admiration, sort of, because of he advocated like a kind of sexual liberty, which a lot of those type of writers were doing at the time. I don't know if a lot of them actually advocated or even knew like all the shit that he got up to when he was alive, but in his writings they're like, yeah, we need to push the boundaries. We need to like get rid of all these like moralistic structures and stuff like that, which, that's fine. Now, his stuff wasn't really widely published until, I think, the first widely available, copy of one of his works was not until 1904. At which point he kind of got like, an intellectual resurgence, I guess, because a lot of people got interested in his work. And some people that were really interested in his work were the surrealists, like Salvador Dali was really into his shit, and Louis Buñuel. They made like a couple things like based on his works. And he kind of became a sort of like cultural transgressive touchstone, I feel like it later on. You know, like Jesus Franco made fucking Justine with Klaus Kinski in it. You know, Pasolini made Sallow 120 Days of Sodom, which was a loose adaptation of 120 Days of Sodom, except, you know, updated to fascist Italy, World War II Italy, where he's kind of like highlighting the hypocrisy of these ruling elites fucking over the working class is kind of like what he was doing, which I get that, how you can do that message and you can kind of like, you know, see that in his work and everything like that. But, you know, considering what he did in his real life, I just don't think that can be justified in any
just because
manner.
the upper class is fucking you over doesn't mean it gives you right
doesn't
to
mean
fuck over
you're
some
allowed
girl.
to.
Yeah,
That's
right.
what I mean. And it's funny because, you know what's really weird? The book that Sophie sent me, the one that Ian Brady wrote, The Gates of Janus.
Yeah.
Ian Brady, The Moor's Murder. Now, Ian Brady was actually a big fan of the Marquis de Sade, as he was of Nietzsche, who was influenced by de
Nietzsche
Sade.
would have fucked him over, though.
Well, he was very influenced by de Sade, though, and a lot of their ideas are similar. So Ian Brady was like a big fan and had like some of his books and things. And honestly, like some of de Sade's works were banned in the UK for a time because of that, because of their association with Ian Brady. And it's interesting because when you read that book that Ian Brady wrote, a lot of his ideas sound very similar to what de Sade was saying, where because, you know, the church is hypocritical, because the government is hypocritical, because they're allowed to have the death penalty, they do this, they fuck people over, they do this. So somehow, like, it's okay if you do it too. It almost seems like that's what they're saying.
Yeah, I'm going to speak up in defense of Nietzsche, though. Nietzsche fucking was anti-solipsism. In other words, yeah, you can do what you want to do, but you got to understand that other people can do what they want to do. You know what I mean?
Which is something that
Which is, yeah, do what you want to do, but there's fucking reciprocation involved. There's going to be fucking blowback.
Well, see, that's what and I was thinking about this earlier today, that I find it very interesting that the Marquis de Sade and a lot of guys that are like this, it's like they're very, you know, they're very set on, you know, and they kind of like get a lot of mileage out of, oh, I can do whatever I want to do. But then if someone imposes their will on them,
then all of a
they
sudden
don't like it.
Right.
Like immediately, because he was like, when he was in prison, he was just like whining about how put upon he was. And I feel like that's a very common thing with these types of dudes, is that as long as they're in power and they're doing what they want to do and you can't say anything about it, then it's fine.
Yeah.
But if somebody tries to, you know, use your philosophy against you, I'm going to impose my will on you now, bitch, and then they don't like it.
This is going to take me back to...
Which is hypocritical in itself, because you're only advocating that philosophy for you and not for everyone else.
Exactly. You got to go back to fucking writers like fucking Minamoto Musashi and fucking Sun Tzu. You have no right at all to take the life of another person unless you yourself are able to give up your life without complaint. You know what I'm talking about?
And I would agree with that.
It's like a kamikaze type mentality. You have no right to kill another person until you're ready to die.
Yeah.
And you can scale that down to, you don't have your right. You have no right to do anything bad against another person until you're ready to accept the consequences.
That's what I mean.
Of what you fucking did. And you got guys like fucking the Marquis who are very classist, where they're gonna fuck over some fucking peasant girl, and then get pissed off when
they get put in jail,
when they get put in jail for it
trouble.
or whatever. Right? Yeah, that's not how it goes.
Don't get mad about it.
Don't get mad about it. Fucking, you reap what you sow. You live by the sword, you die by the sword.
That's what I mean.
That's the shit that Minamoto Musashi and fucking
I would
Sun
be
Tzu
pissed. I mean, okay, now in some ways,
and Nietzsche was like that too. You live by the sword, you die by the sword.
Yeah.
You have to fucking get ready for that.
In some ways, I have to, like, I will give the Marquis this much credit. At least yes, he was pointing out the hypocrisy of the church. Yes, he was pointing out like the hypocrisy of like government officials who were like saying one thing and doing another. Fair enough, and that's true. And at least the Marquis was honest about what a shit he was and the shit that he was doing. At least he was open about it. I'm not saying that's good, like the shit that he did, but at least it was marginally better that he was admitting it and not pretending that he was to be something that he wasn't. He basically said, yeah, I'm the worst, which, okay. At least he was honest about it. I will give him that much leeway, but he was doing the same shit that other people were doing. Just the fact that he wasn't lying about it doesn't make it makes it like a millimeter better, but that's about it.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I don't know. I just feel like there's this whole, like I said, I'm not saying that, we should burn his fucking novels or anything. Like, they're novels. It's like you can write whatever you want in a novel. You can put whatever you want in a movie. As long as, people who want to read it can read it. If you don't want to read it, don't read it. But the fact that he did what he did and he felt like he had almost like the right to do that because these people were not people to him, or they didn't have the same rights as he had, or something like that. And it seems like his whole worldview, and I felt that when I was reading Ian Brady's book too. It's like it feels like he thinks that he's a lot smarter than he is, but when you're reading his shit, it's like glaringly hypocritical.
Yeah.
Even though he's condemning hypocrisy in other people, but it's hypocritical what they're saying also.
That's the problem with these kind of guys.
Yeah, that's why it makes me so angry.
Yeah.
It's that it's almost kind of like they see like this far, but they can't see, they're not like self-aware enough to see what I see, like that someone else can see it.
The Marquis is a good example of solipsism in many ways. Okay. Don't ban the Marquis. You just understand the Marquis for what he is. The Marquis was a fucking sex offender. He was a shitbird.
Yeah.
If that dude got a hold of my daughter, I don't have a daughter, but if he got a hold of my daughter or my son, did some shit, I would have killed that motherfucker.
And rightfully so.
Yeah,
like I said, anyone would have done the same.
And he would have complained.
That's what I mean.
So you're dealing with...
At least don't complain and own that shit.
Yeah. You just want to, take it for what it is and understand it for what it is. I mean, the dude was a dirtbag.
Yeah.
He wrote some fucking wild-ass porn. He did some fucking wild-ass shit. But he was a shitbird.
Yeah.
And he spent a lot of time in the fucking prisons in Bastille where he belonged. If he was around today, you would never have known that dude. He would have just been locked up.
Yeah.
And you'd have been like, fuck, what?
Yeah, what a creep.
Yeah. There's lots of guys like that. There's serial killers and serial rapists. That's what he was.
And
he was a fucking rapist.
Pretty much who he aligns with. Yes, he was a good writer. Yes, he was probably an important writer in the context of his time, in the context of the ideas that were coming about in the time. But, as a person, not so great. But you know what I found was really interesting? I found this fucking article in The Guardian or something like that from like 2015. And they were talking to a guy named, I think I guess you pronounce it Hugh de Sade, who is his direct descendant. Now, the weird thing about this is that, as I said, because his stuff was published anonymously or, it was banned in a lot of places and stuff like that, so it didn't really get a wide release until the 1900s. So the weird thing was that he was saying that their family, for a long time, because... the Marquis de Sade's son not only had burned a lot of his shit, but it kind of like crossed him out of the genealogies and stuff like that because he wanted him like anathema. He wanted him like erased from history. So for a long time, the family either didn't know he existed or pretended he didn't exist. So up until the 1940s, the de Sade family, who were still living in the same area and shit like that, didn't realize that they were direct descendants of the Marquis de Sade because he wasn't like super famous. Right? Because his shit didn't really get published until the 1900s. So the weird thing was this historian who was fascinated by the Marquis de Sade approaches, the family in the 1940s and said, hey, this is your ancestor. And they were kind of like, we didn't know about that guy. Because like I said, they had kind of like tried to like erase him. And they said, well, why don't you like check out some shit? So they go to Lacoste, which was still there. Or their ancestral home or whatever, And they found a bunch of his like letters and manuscripts that no one had ever found before. So they found like letters to like his kids and his wife and shit like that. They found like all this stuff. And so like they ended up publishing it. The weird thing about it is that it, you know, in the US, and even if you see like fucking cheesy ass like horror movies from the 80s, like Waxwork and stuff like that, like Waxwork has the Marquis de Sade in it, but he's like a villain. Like he's a bit like one of the 12 worst people in the world or something like that. Whatever the premise of that movie was. But in France, he's not a national hero or anything like that, but he is seen as like literary, like important from a literary standpoint.
As they would in France.
As, yeah, you know, just his ideas were important. I think they realized he kind of sucked, but it's like his ideas were important. So they do.
He's an ancient degenerate. If
Yeah.
you ask me,
So they'll give him like, he had a big, the Musée d'Orsay had like a big like fucking exhibition of like shit that was like influenced by him, because they're talking about like transgressive like art and film and stuff like that, like in light of him and how influential he was like over a lot of that stuff, which he was, if you think about it. So they had like a big exhibition on that. And then I was reading this interview with his direct descendant, like Hugh de Sade, who apparently he decided, because the Marquis's reputation has been, I don't want to say whitewashed, but it's not as bad as it was, at least in France. So he said, well, I'm going to make some money out of this shit. So he basically started a kind of a luxury goods company called the Maison de Sade. I mean, it's his family. And so he sells like shit that's, you know, famous from the Provence area, like wines and, you know, different kinds of meat, like quail and stuff like that. And it's like really expensive shit. And he sells it. He even has like a wine, like a line of wines, like de Sade, that has like a naked lady on the front. Okay. And apparently, like, it's like this big thing. And I heard, I don't know if this ever came to pass or not, but he was talking about in this 2015 article that he was talking to Victoria's Secret about starting a line of lingerie.
Oh, so we can go
like
to the
based
mall
around
and buy it.
And buy. I don't know if that ever
mall.
happened or not, because you know what I mean.
At the local dead malls.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was thinking, because I don't know if Victoria's Secret is doing all that well, like nowadays, like 5 years later. No. But in 2015, they were talking about doing it then, so I don't know. But another thing that he does sell is, remember how I said like his skull got like taken by the phrenologist and everything? And apparently they did find it. They had a cast of it and everything. So now this dude like sells bronze replicas of the Marquis de Sade's actual skull, and they're like 5,000 euros or some shit like that.
Fuck out of here.
And it's like, I was like, well, you know, whatever. It's his family member. It's like, if people want to. It's funny because I heard that the Marquis de Sade wine, like the U.S. refused to import it because porn.
Yeah, I don't think that de Sade would have been a very big deal back in his day. He just would have been considered to be a degenerate shitbag.
Well, as I said, I think a lot of aristocrats were doing the same shit that he did. Just the fact that he made such a big production out of it.
Well,
got him into trouble.
I'm not sure I don't think your average corrupt French nobleman did the amount of debauchery that he did. I really did think that he maxed it out.
And he did that on purpose. He was trying to do. I think he was trying to shock everybody.
He said that.
Yeah.
But he probably was just like a fucking extremely predatory bisexual sadist. That would probably just explain everything.
And like you said, you literally could not trust anyone around him.
No.
Human, animal,
inanimate object.
I think
I would say he, you know, if everything is true, what they say about him, he was, what do you call it, a sex addict.
Yeah.
Sex addict, bisexual.
I feel like even if you left him in your house with nobody in there, I wouldn't touch anything in that house, because he probably rubbed his taint and his balls all over every single thing in your house.
Now, what would impress me, I'm going to tell you how...
While you were gone.
I'm going to tell you what would really impress me about de Sade.
What's that?
Is if he was actually a dude that really didn't get any, and this was all a fantasy, and he's just writing about it.
And then he got everyone to believe it.
And he got everyone to believe that he was all this. Which, you know, there's a chance where that might be partially true.
Although so many people reported
there's too many police reports
activities.
About it. Too many police reports.
I mean, so many women
he was a sexual
escaped
predator.
from his house and were like, hey.
today you would just consider him to be a fucking. He would just be a serial rapist.
Yeah, like
That's
I
what
said.
he would be.
And in a way, like, kudos to to France in the 1700s. At least they put this motherfucker
Yeah, they're like, we don't know what a serial
for almost
rapist,
half of his life.
We don't know what.
We don't even care like what
Yeah.
that is, but this
Yeah.
is bad.
France and back in the 1700s would be like, we don't really know what a serial rapist is, but we got to lock your ass up.
Yeah, it's like, this is not good.
Yeah,
So they at
'Cause
least
they
knew
knew-
enough to do that.
they knew enough to that. Yeah.
So, you know. Anyway. All right. So we've probably gone on long enough about the Marquis de Sade. Tom's getting very, very drunk.
I'm fucking loaded.
I probably am too.
I'm having a good time though.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
So we will
Long as I
probably...
As long as I can remain standing.
So yeah, so we're gonna wrap this up for this week. Hope you guys enjoyed episode 185. Remember, if you like the show, like, share, subscribe on all your social media. Check out our new Instagram. We've had that up for a few weeks, so we've had like a bunch of people follow us. So go over there and check us out if you haven't already. If you'd like to financially support the show, of course, you can go to our Patreon page, patreon.com/13o'clockpodcast, or you can go to our blog, 13o'clockpodcast.wordpress.com, and there's a button in the sidebar that goes right to a PayPal account if you'd like to give a one-time donation. Anything would be much appreciated, and we will see you next time. Bye. So he gets lured back.
I can't understand this shit. You're gonna get in big trouble.
Stop tearing up the paper.
Don't stop tearing up paper.
Stop tearing up the paper,
She's
Poking.
crazy.
Yeah, she wants attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're tearing up paper. Stop
Okay.
it. It's a pathological behavior with this kid.
Poor
to
baby.
tear up paper.